Chapter 117. Nian Bing's attack this time was launched after careful consideration. Although the magic covered a large area, once it came into contact with the target, the power of 9 dragons and 9 phoenixes would immediately attack a single point under the control of the spiritual force. This was a single-target attack magic, and it was also the most powerful magic Nian Bing could think of. In terms of control, he believed that there was nothing to be picky about. With a loud bang, streaks of light flashed, and surging magical elements burst out crazily. On the surface, the power of the dragon and phoenix flames did not seem as strong as the 2 spells of the 9th step, but in fact the attack power was much stronger. Firstly, it was because of the compression, and secondly, it was because of the concentration of the attack. In order to destroy a strong defense, the best way to attack was to concentrate the attack on a single point. The halo gradually dissipated, and the fatty jumped out of the pit with his head and face covered in dirt. His face was covered in dirt because he had underestimated his opponent. But it was only a face covered in dirt and nothing more. Nian Bing opened his eyes wide, looking at Fatso, whose clothes were not even damaged, and brushing the dirt off his body. He could not help but feel a sense of powerlessness. Such an attack was unable to harm him. Could it be that the fat on his body was armor? Even if it was armor, it would not be able to withstand such an attack. "I'm not fighting anymore, I admit defeat." Nian Bing shook his head helplessly. Fatso looked at Nian Bing approvingly and said, "Kid, this time you are much stronger than last time. At least you know how to attack a single point and I can't dodge it. However, do you think that magic needs to be beautiful? Beautiful magic effects will only consume more mana. If you could condense your mana into a single point just now, perhaps you could really cause me trouble. Admit defeat and then let's go back to that city and continue cooking for me. This area is rich in spiritual energy, and it's very comfortable to sleep here. I've decided, before you defeat me, you don't have to leave this place. Have you thought about what to cook for me today? My requirements are not high, just a little stronger than last time will do." Nian Bing frowned. "Didn't you say that you would go wherever I go? Why are you going back on your words?" He had already thought about it. After leaving this place, they immediately set off for the Ottoman Empire. When it came to Yu Ruyan, he would rely on the combined strength of Yu Ruyan and her husband as well as himself. He might be able to rescue Feng Nu, but Fatso did not explicitly limit him. But his words were like a cage, and it was impossible for her to leave. Fatso smiled and looked at Nian Bing said, "Boy, don't think about it. If you want to save your wife, you can only rely on yourself. Let's go, this time you still have some magic power left. You don't need me to carry you, right?" After sleeping for 10 days, I was already hungry. The money I earned last time should be enough to buy the ingredient. Nian Bing glared fiercely at Fatso. "Fine, you win. However, you have to be careful. Although your external defense is strong, your internal defense may not be. Be careful, or I'll poison you." 2 months later. Longmu Plains. As the most famous plains on the Yangon continent, this fertile land gave birth to tens of millions of people of the Longmu Empire. The Longmu Plains were not only flat, but there were also many rivers running across it. Its geographical location was not high above sea level. Under the influence of various conditions, the plains were extremely fertile, enough for all kinds of plants to grow. Almost all of the Longmu Empire's food resources came from the Longmu Plains. It could be said that the Longmu Plains was the Longmu Empire's granary. The Longmu Plains was located in the south of the Longmu Empire, occupying more than a third of the country's area. In order to protect the Longmu Empire's greatest wealth and guard against the Huarong Empire, the Longmu Empire stationed a large number of troops near the Sirius Mountains at the end of the Longmu Plains. Speaking of which, the Longmu Empire could be considered lucky. At the border between the Longmu Empire and the Huarong Empire, the Sirius Mountains became the natural boundary between the two empires. The mountains at the border took up almost 3/4 of the length of the border between the two empires. The remaining quarter was built by the Longmu Empire's many years of hard work. The fortress was built against the mountains, and even with the advantage of geography, it was still garrisoned with 200,000 troops. It could be said that the fortress was ready to welcome the Hwarong Empire's attack at any time. Because of the Longmu Empire's enormous defensive system, the Hwarong Empire had never had the opportunity to break through the fortress and enter the Longmu Plains to plunder. However, this kind of writing ended a month ago. A month ago, the Hwarong Empire suddenly launched a surprise attack on the Longmu Empire. The Hwarong Empire's northern field army did not move, but instead sent out 100,000 troops from the rear. The northern field army sent out 200,000 troops to follow behind the central field army. Everything was done extremely quickly, and it was obvious that this was premeditated. The central field army was personally led by Prince Rong, who led the Order of the Flaming Lion and the most elite light and heavy cavalry troops of the Central Field Army. The 100,000 troops were all made up of cavalry. The equipment and expenses of this army were almost equivalent to half of the Hwarong Empire's entire military budget. Each of the 4 field armies of the Hwarong Empire had 300,000 soldiers. The 200,000 troops sent out by the Central Field Army and the 100,000 troops personally led by Prince Rong made a total of 300,000 soldiers charging towards the Celestial Wolf Mountain Range at the fastest speed possible. The 100,000 cavalry led by Prince Rong took the lead, but they did not charge towards the Longmu Empire's fortress. Instead, they chose a different direction, and because of this, the Longmu Empire was caught off guard. The method used by the Hwarong Empire was very extreme. The Longmu Empire only understood what the Hwarong Empire was doing after this battle ended. They used the simplest method, but also the most difficult method, blowing up the mountains. Under the leadership of Prince Rong, hundreds of fire mages continuously bombarded the thinnest parts of the Celestial Wolf Mountain Range with their powerful fire magic. In particular, Prince Rong personally cast a forbidden spell. In just one day, they actually blew up 3 mountains that were more than 300 feet tall, forcibly opening up a path that was more than 100 feet wide in the center of the Celestial Wolf Mountain Range. Using this path, Prince Rong led the cavalry army directly into the Longmu Plains. By the time the Longmu Empire noticed, Prince Rong's army had already broken through the 3 lines of defense of the Longmu Plains and entered the fertile land. At this time, the other 200,000 Hwarong Empire soldiers had also entered the Longmu Empire. This army was led by Prince Rong's eldest son, Rongyu. Other than fighting, the army led by Prince Rong did not stop at all. They only plundered enough supplies and resources before continuing to enter the Longmu Plains. The 200,000 soldiers led by Rongyu were in charge of cleaning up the mess. All kinds of plundered resources were transported back to the Hwarong Empire through the newly opened path as quickly as possible. Their actions could only be described as bandit. This action shocked the entire Longmu Empire. The king of the Longmu Empire immediately deployed an army. They surrounded and annihilated Prince Rong's 100,000 cavalry soldiers. However, who was Prince Rong? It could be said that at least half of the Hwarong Empire's territory was conquered by him. When it came to marching and fighting, how many people in the world could compare to him? Relying on the flexibility of the cavalry, he avoided most of the Longmu Empire's troops. He specifically found small groups of Longmu Empire's troops to surround and annihilate. Moreover, his methods were extremely strange. Once he approached the enemy's troops and surrendered, he did not kill them. Instead, he ordered them to leave behind all their resources, equipment, and horses before chasing them away. These soldiers and civilians who had lost their equipment fled in all directions. This caused the entire Longmu Plains to fall into chaos. It was not that the Longmu Empire did not counterattack the Hwarong Empire after Prince Rong led the northern army to invade. However, when the troops left behind to guard the fortress rushed to the Northern Army's camp, they suddenly realized that the 150,000 soldiers of the Hwarong Empire's northeastern army had already been integrated into the Northern Army's camp. Their defense was impregnable. In the battle, the Longmu Empire lost almost 50,000 soldiers before they were able to retreat to the fortress. Demon Commander Arclight's treacherous and cunning caused the Longmu Empire's army to suffer greatly. However, the Longmu Empire was after all a powerful country in the Yangon continent, second only to the Hwarong Empire. After half a month of panic, they finally formed a blockade. They gathered almost 700,000 soldiers and gradually put pressure on Prince Rong's 100,000 soldiers in the form of an encirclement. They also sent out 6 of their most elite cavalry regiments as the main force, as well as the support of master magicians. The king of the Longmu Empire had already given the order to prevent Prince Rong and the Order of the Flaming Lion from leaving the Longmu Plains at all costs. Reporting. The scout rushed into the tent. He knelt down in front of Prince Rong. Prince Rong calmly said, "Speak." "Yes, Your Highness. The Longmu Empire's army is less than 100 li away from us. Among them, the Glory, Fire Peak, Tiger Cub, Furious Dragon, Silver Armor, and Blood Massacre are less than 50 li away from us." "Good, continue scouting." "Yes." The scout hurriedly left. Prince Rong's 2 younger brothers, Rong Yen and Rong Fei, who were both magisters, were standing in the tent. After hearing the scout's report, Rong Fei said, "Big brother, shouldn't we make a move? 50 li away, with the speed of the elite cavalry, it would take at most 2 hours to reach us. I didn't expect them to be so close to us." Prince Rong smiled faintly and said, "The reason I gave the order to rest here for 2 days is to let them approach us. Otherwise, how would they be able to pinpoint our exact location? Don't worry, my Order of the Flaming Lion isn't something anyone dares to attack. The 6 cavalry regiments aren't as strong as us. If my guess is correct, they won't act rashly before the Longmu Empire's army arrives. Rong Bing, what's the current situation of our army?" For this battle, Prince Rong had specially brought Rong Bing and Rong Ji, the 2 most outstanding members of the Rong family's 3rd generation, with him. Rong Bing was in charge of the army's logistics. "We still have 87,000 cavalry, 20,000 heavy cavalry, and the rest are all light cavalry. The dead and injured have already been sent back to the country by the Northern Army's supply line. Because the Order of the Flaming Lion rarely attacks, there are no casualties. These numbers don't take into account the special forces." Prince Rong nodded and looked at the dozens of high-ranking officers in the tent. He smiled faintly and said, "Our first mission has already been completed. Yesterday, Rong Yu sent news that the resources we plundered this time were twice as much as we expected. The Longmu Empire is really a rich country. Now that Rong Yu's army has returned to the country through the route we opened, it's time for us to retreat. Second brother, third brother, how's our army's recovery?" Rong Yen said, "Because of the last time we opened the mountain, we couldn't adjust our strength properly. That's why they haven't joined the battle these past few days. Now they've basically recovered. Big brother, the last time you used the forbidden spell also consumed a lot of energy. How's your recovery?" Prince Rong said indifferently, "I'm fine. Since we've recovered, it's time for them to speak up. At the same time, the secret forces are on standby and ready to attack. Before we leave this fertile plain, I want the Longmu Empire to remember that we've been here. I think, in the short history of the Longmu Empire, they will remember this war." Rong Yen smiled. "They've probably remembered it very well. Rong Yu, that brat, is really not simple. This time, he really dug 3 feet into the ground. He didn't leave a single thing behind." Prince Rong smiled. "That's how it should be. The resources we plundered this time are enough for our military expenses for several years. The Longmu Empire is indeed a fat sheep. All right, let's deploy according to the original plan. Second brother, third brother, follow me to face the enemy." Only Prince Roang could remain so calm when facing an army of 700,000 with less than 90,000 people. After an hour, Prince Roang led Roang Nian and Roang Fei. Behind them were several elders with a golden lion embroidered on their chests. They looked into the distance. This was a plain, so they could see very far. They were still tens of miles away, but they could already see the billowing smoke and dust brought by the Longmu Empire's army. Almost 700,000 soldiers seemed to cover the sky and earth, forming a semi-encirclement that was pressing down on them at an extremely fast speed. Behind Prince Roang was the famous Order of the Flaming Lion. This was the continent's #1 Knight Regiment, and their equipment was extremely neat. Other than the fire element mages, all the knights wore fiery red light armor, had a red knight spear that was 20 feet long, and a wide saber that was 4 feet long. Even their mounts were maroon in color. They were lined up neatly, as if a cloud of fire had descended on the plain. Behind the Order of the Flaming Lion were the remaining 70,000 or so elite cavalrymen of the Huarong Empire. 20,000 of them were heavy cavalrymen protecting the flanks, while the light cavalrymen were in the middle. Together with the Order of the Flaming Lion in front, they formed a sharp triangle. This was clearly an assault formation. Facing such a strong enemy, Prince Roang did not seem to consider how to escape. Instead, he was prepared to face the enemy head-on. The rumbling sounds grew louder as the enemy approached. Prince Roang smiled faintly and said calmly, "Everyone, get ready. Mages, get ready. Blazing prairie. Direction, straight ahead." Low chants sounded almost at the same time. A total of 500 fire element mages, who were at least grand mages, began to chant the same incantation. As the flames condensed in the air, a huge red cloud appeared above the Order of the Flaming Lion. Prince Roang was riding on a tall and handsome horse. Although he was a mage, he had always been fond of horsemanship since he was young. When he followed the army to war, he had always ridden on the back of a horse. The Longmu Empire's army gradually approached. The first to appear were 6 neat square formations. These were the 6 strongest cavalry divisions of the Longmu Empire. They were obviously afraid of the Huarong Empire's army. The 6 cavalry divisions were spread out. They did not advance very quickly, waiting for the reinforcements to catch up. The Longmu Empire's main army was completely composed of heavy cavalrymen and heavy infantrymen. They looked like a moving steel wall. As they gradually approached, they emitted a huge pressure. The Flaming Lion Knight Regiment didn't ride alone. The 500 magicians and the 500 most elite knights all rode on the same horse. These horses were specially selected and had excellent load bearing and endurance. The Flaming Lion Knight Regiment also brought 500 empty horses. Once the battle ended, the magicians would return to their mounts. This way, they would be able to unleash their full potential in the battle. The dwarves gradually approached. The Order of the Flaming Lion's magic was fully formed. Prince Roang smiled faintly. He said, "Since they are already here, let's give them a greeting gift. Blazing Prairie, release." After he gave the order, the huge red cloud floated up. In a flash, it passed through the plains and floated towards the enemy, who was already 10 miles away. The Longmu Empire seemed to be prepared for the Huarong Empire's magic attack. Various colors of magic light rose in their rank. It was obvious that their mages did not belong to the fire element like the Huarong Empire's mages. Various magic shields appeared one after another in front of their troop. The 6 cavalrymen at the front were divided into 2 groups. They quickly retreated to the flanks of the army. Once they retreated, they would not be able to defend against the Huarong Empire's magic attack. Then, the mages and the heavily armored soldiers would have to use their bodies to defend. Prince Roang smiled faintly. Even a grain of rice can shine. This is a group magic war. It's all about perfect coordination. As he spoke, he followed his 2 younger brothers and began to chant the incantation. 3 purple flames began to burn at the tip of the Order of the Flaming Lion. The ground shook violently as the magic came into contact with each other. The dazzling magic light collided in the air and produced a huge explosion. It was definitely the most beautiful fireworks. The red cloud seemed to be full of corrosive power. It continuously broke through layer after layer of seven-colored light. Every time it broke through a layer of defense, the red cloud would get closer to the ground. Just as both sides were in a stalemate, 3 magic lions with a body length of more than 15 meters rushed to the front of the Longmu Empire's troops. The 3 lions of heavenly fire did not seem to be hindered at all. They easily tore through layer after layer of defense and rushed directly into the heavily armored soldiers' camp. That was 2 level 10 magic spells and a level 11 forbidden spell. The mages of the Longmu Empire were already at their limit. Faced with such a powerful attack, how could they resist? In an instant, the places that the lions of heavenly fire passed through were charred charcoal. The red cloud in the sky also floated down because there was no longer any resistance from the enemy. In an instant, the entire vanguard of the Longmu Empire was completely engulfed in a sea of fire. It was indeed the blazing prairie. Prince Rong raised his right hand and shouted, "Charge!" The 3 old men with golden lions who were originally behind him rushed out first. He and his 2 younger brothers followed closely behind. The 90,000-strong army was like a sharp arrow. They kept accelerating and rushed towards the huge army of the Longmu Empire. The power of a group magic spell coupled with a forbidden spell was absolutely terrifying. Just the magic attack alone had already taken the lives of 30,000 soldiers of the Longmu Empire. They were the most precious heavily armored soldiers. Seeing the cavalry of the Huarong Empire charging, the Longmu Empire immediately reacted. In an instant, the 6 cavalry regiments that were originally scattered were indeed the best of the best. They actually gathered together at the fastest speed and charged fearlessly towards the Order of the Flaming Lion. Their goal was very simple. As long as they destroyed the Order of the Flaming Lion, then the army of the Huarong Empire would no longer be a threat. An elite cavalry regiment of 6 continents had at least a 70% chance of defeating the number 1 Order of the Flaming Lion on the continent. This was especially so when the opponent's magician had just released a large area magic spell and would not be able to continue attacking for a short period of time. The cavalry of both sides kept getting closer and closer. The distance of 10 miles shortened to 5 miles, 4 miles, 3 miles in the blink of an eye. At this moment, something strange happened. A dazzling fireball was released from Prince Rong's hand, exploding into millions of sparks in the air. In the next moment, the originally neat formation of the Order of the Flaming Lion suddenly split into 2, causing a huge crack to appear in the front of the triangular formation. The rumbling of the horses' hooves seemed to be even louder. A huge ball of red rushed forward from the rear and replaced the Order of the Flaming Lion's position. The separated Order of the Flaming Lion turned around and merged back together after a short 2 miles of galloping. However, they were no longer at the front of the formation. Charging at the front of the Huarong Empire's cavalry regiment were 5 people. They were fully clad in heavy armor, with the insignia of a golden sun on the chest of their armor. Every one of them seemed to be burning with a red flame. Their valiant aura was completely released when they accelerated. The most terrifying thing was that they were not riding horses, but dragons. Earth dragons, the ironback earth dragons that had almost taken Yen Bing's life. The ironback earth dragons were 30 feet long and 15 feet tall, and their bodies were completely covered in armor. However, this did not affect their powerful galloping ability. Every time the gigantic dragon stepped on the ground, it brought about a strong shock. What was even more frightening was that it wasn't just the 5 people at the front who were riding earth dragons. Following behind them were 3,000 ironback earth dragons. On the back of each earth dragon sat a fully armored cavalryman. In each of their hands was a huge spear that was 30 feet long and as thick as an arm. There were 4 sharp blades at the tip of the spear, and each blade had deep blood grooves. These special spears were named dragon spears. and this team of 3,000 people was formed through the continuous efforts of mages. They were Prince Rong's true trump card, the true number 1 cavalry regiment in the continent, the Order of the Flaming Dragon. 3,000. This number was not huge. But if the word Earth Dragon was added after 3,000, it would definitely be a terrifying number. Ironback Earth Dragons. They had super strong defensive abilities, and with their armor and magic resistance, they were definitely the nightmare of any army. Not to mention, every Earth Dragon had a great swordsman riding on its back. The impact they formed was definitely not something that could be stopped by humans. Prince Rong's previous command of magic attacks and the charge of the entire army was to create momentum for this secret weapon of the cavalry regiment. He wanted to make full use of their impact. After entering the Longmu Empire for so long, facing the enemy's elites, he finally sent out this team. This demon-like team. When the overall formation was completed, the Order of the Flaming Dragon at the front was less than a mile away from the enemy. The 6 elite cavalry regiments of the Longmu Empire had no time to react. Heavens! What is that? The commander of the Longmu Empire stared blankly at the Order of the Flaming Dragon that was about to come into contact with his own troops. Then, he saw a horrifying scene. 5 magnificent flames shot out from the 5 dragon spears at the front. In an instant, the Order of the Flaming Dragon charged into the midst of the 6 Longmu Empire's elite cavalry regiment. No matter how elite a cavalry regiment was, they were still riding horses, while the enemy was riding dragons. Once the Ironback Earth Dragon charged, its terrifying weight would be unimaginable. With its sturdy body and insane speed, even a military expert would have to temporarily avoid its sharpness, not to mention the simultaneous charge of 3,000 Earth Dragons. Boom! The entire battlefield was filled with the sound of armor shattering. The Order of the Flaming Dragon was like a gigantic blade, directly piercing into the midst of the 6 Longmu Empire cavalry regiments. In a moment, blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Just the charge of the dragon spears alone had already taken away the lives of thousands of Longmu Empire cavalry soldiers. This battle, to the Order of the Flaming Lion, was extremely comfortable. They only needed to be responsible for the remnants of the enemy troops on both sides of the Order of the Flaming Dragon. The former number 1 cavalry regiment of the continent was absolutely astonishing. Especially after the enemy's courage was shaken, everything else they did was much smoother. From the beginning of contact to the time when the blazing demon dragon knights rushed out of the Longmu Empire's 6 elite cavalry regiments, it took the time to eat a meal. When the dragons rushed into the rear of the Longmu Empire's army, the 6 cavalry regiments that they were so proud of no longer existed. Not even a single horse was left. They were completely devoured by the Hwarong Empire's army. At this moment, the second wave of blazing flames soared into the sky. Their target was the enemies on both sides of their army. The warriors of the Order of the Flaming Lion were already extremely well coordinated. Even without Prince Rong's orders, they knew what to do when and what to do. With the protection of the Order of the Flaming Lion and the magicians on both sides, the Order of the Flaming Dragon unleashed its strongest attack. Even the heavy infantry of the Longmu Empire couldn't stop the speed of their charge. There were nearly 700,000 soldiers. They were actually scattered by the impact. They couldn't even utilize their advantage in numbers. In the time it took to cook a meal, Prince Rong commanded his cavalry to charge through. Amidst the cheers, the Hwarong Empire's army broke out of the encirclement. However, the battle wasn't over yet. The Longmu Empire's army was mobilized from various defensive areas at the fastest speed in an emergency. They hadn't undergone any training at all. They were able to attack at the same time without being disorganized. However, after this charge, their formation was completely scattered. Especially the soldiers who had personally witnessed the power of the Order of the Flaming Dragon. They were so scared that they scattered in all directions. Everything was out of their control. At this moment, The old but ruthless Prince Rong still had no intention of letting them go. After the order of the flaming dragon charged out for 10 miles, it turned around and led the entire cavalry to charge back. Once again, it charged into the army of the Longmu Empire. This time, everything was much simpler. The most famous battle in the history of Yangon was thus engraved with the name of the Order of the Flaming Dragon and the name of the Flaming Lion King, Rong Yen. This battle was known as the birth of the mystic dragon. It was also known as the Longmu Empire's nightmare. Prince Rong led the Order of the Fire Dragon, the Order of the Flaming Lion, and an elite cavalry regiment with a total of 80,000 people. In the end, there were still 60,000 people who managed to break out of the encirclement. The Order of the Fire Dragon, as the vanguard, only lost less than 300 people. The Order of the Flaming Lion lost more than 1,000 people, and almost 100 magicians. The ordinary elite cavalry lost more than 20,000 people. Just by looking at this price, it wasn't a small price to pay. However, compared to the Longmu Empire, this price could only be said to be pitiful. The Longmu Empire had a total of 680,000 soldiers. An elite cavalry regiment with 6 of them lost a total of 260,000 people. An elite cavalry regiment was completely destroyed. Under the attack of the enemy, 200,000 soldiers died under the iron hooves of the Hwarong Empire. This battle greatly damaged the Longmu Empire. They didn't even dare to think of chasing after the enemy. From then on, the originally powerful Longmu Empire's national strength was greatly weakened. They no longer had the strength to fight against the Hwarong Empire. Although the victory of this battle was directly related to the sudden appearance of the Order of the Fire Dragon and its valiant strength, it also had to be said that Prince Rong was shrewd and astute. From the beginning of the battle, he had created all kinds of situations. Within the Longmu Empire, he actually managed to lead the enemy by the nose. From beginning to end, he didn't give the enemy a chance to have a decisive battle in the city. In the battle on the plains, under the circumstances where the enemy didn't construct any defensive structures, the cavalry had an absolute advantage. With the help of the powerful cavalry regiment, he obtained a decisive victory. The Longmu Empire lost. When Mu Jing and Mu Rong returned to the Longmu Empire's capital to summarize the situation, they unanimously agreed that this battle wasn't lost in terms of strength, but in terms of strategy. If they could have lured Prince Rong's cavalry regiment to a city or to a pre-constructed special terrain, no matter how powerful the Order of the Fire Dragon was, it wouldn't have been able to cause such great damage so easily. However, it was too late to say anything. The truth had already been revealed. Under the circumstances where they couldn't defend in time and didn't have time to think of a strategy, the Longmu plains were plundered and more than 300,000 soldiers were annihilated. This result became the greatest humiliation in the history of the Longmu Empire. Chapter 118. When Prince Rong led his army to wage a 3-month war with the Longmu Empire, Nian Bing, who was in the Hwarong Empire, had no idea what was happening. He was still trying his best to rescue Feng Nu, but it could be said that his efforts were in vain. Clouds and mist drifted in the air like smoke. Along with a gentle breeze, it brought a bit of moisture to the mountaintop. After the mist and clouds dispersed, the bare mountaintop was revealed. In the middle of the mountaintop, Fatso was sitting on the ground, chewing something in his mouth. "Sigh, I've already eaten my last drumstick. Why isn't that guy here yet? He's not purposely keeping me in suspense. It's really not easy to eat a big meal from him. Heavens! Why can't he be a woman? If that's the case, I'll make her my wife even if I have to risk my life and let her comfort my stomach every day." As he spoke, Fatso used his oily hands to rub his stomach. His face was full of lament. However, when the lament appeared on his fat face, it looked very comical. "Fatso, you're daydreaming again. Do you think that I can't beat you this time? As long as I win, you'll have to return Feng Nu to me." The low voice sounded like it came from the depths of hell. 7 brilliant lights floated over, and with a soft ding sound, the Big Dipper's 7 stars landed 3 feet in front of the fatty at the same time. They were 7 sabers, but only the hilts were exposed. At the end of each saber, there was a resplendent gem of different shapes and colors embedded in it. Blue, red, green, yellow, silver, white, and black. The 7 colors intertwined and immediately covered the mountaintop with a layer of dense treasure light. This was no ordinary treasure light. Instead, it was a special barrier that fused 7 magical elements. Unless the spellcaster was willing to do so, or the 7-colored gem that powered the barrier was completely destroyed, no one would be able to touch these 7 swords. Fatso clapped his hands and laughed. Good! Good! The treasures are all here. Kid who uses treasures, come out too. Hurry up and show me what you've got this time. If you can beat me, I'll return Feng Nu to you. Otherwise, as usual, give me a full 7-element feast. Fatso, be careful. This time, I'm afraid that not only will you not be able to eat the 7-element feast, but you'll also lose your life here. In the clouds, a figure dressed in gray clothes slowly walked over. It was Nian Bing. He did not look at Fatso. His eyes were fixed on the 7 gems, as if they were everything in his life. 3 months had passed. Nian Bing's perseverance slowly. Every 10 days he lost, fought. At the beginning, he had no ability to resist, but now Fatso was sphere. In these 3 months his strengths, and his. But he deeply experienced the wonders of the Tian Yen acupoint. It was indeed something that the innate domain could not compare to. In these 3 months, every 10 days, Nian Bing would have to experience a difficult battle. His battle with Fatso had become a pattern. Every time, he would attack with all his strength first. Fatso used all kinds of methods to resolve it, but when he found that he couldn't break through Fatso's defense, he could only admit defeat. The result of admitting defeat was to cook, and make all kinds of delicious food for Fatso to eat. With constant contact, Nian Bing was surprised to find that Fatso had a deep understanding of food. He would often give Nian Bing all kinds of suggestions. His suggestions were not nitpicking, and each time, his suggestions were right on point. He was simply a senior gourmet. His suggestions constantly improved Nian Bing's culinary skills. After the Ice and Fire 9 Heavens cuisine, he finally created the 7-element feast. Nian Bing didn't expect his culinary skills to improve. But what made Nian Bing suffer was that every time he finished cooking for Fatso, he would be baptized by Fatso's heavy punches. Then, he would be beaten down by Fatso and enter the innate domain to cultivate. Although the cultivation was wonderful, it was not comfortable to be beaten up every 10 days. Fortunately, Fatso's beatings didn't bring any real harm to him. The fatty chuckled and said, "That will depend on your ability. You must know that Fatso will risk his life to eat. The so-called shredded meat is precious, and the price of meat slices is even higher. If there is a big piece of meat, both can be thrown away. Come on, I think the oil in my stomach is enough to play with you for 1 round." Nian Bing sighed and said, "Fatso, why do you have to make things difficult for me? Give me back Feng Nu. If worse comes to worst, I will continuously cook 7 types of dishes for you for a month. If you don't let me see Feng Nu today, even if I have to risk my life to use life magic, I will make you stay here. It's already been 3 months, but you still haven't let me see Feng Nu even once. Today I will risk my life." Fatso pinched his chin full of fat and said, "That won't do. If you don't have the hope in your heart, the food you cook will taste worse. After tasting the last one, how can you let me eat the next one? To tell you the truth, your innate talent is the best among all the people I have seen. With a human body, you can practice magic to such a level. Fatso really admires you. Kid, do you think you can use life magic in front of me?" Nian Bing smiled bitterly and said, It's not like you don't know that I practice magic not to become a mage, but to be able to make more delicious dishes. Moreover, I can only use spells of the 8th step at most. Using spells of the 9th step is already very taxing on me." Fatso shook his head and said, "It's not the same. Although you can only use spells of the 8th step, your control and understanding of magic is something that those so-called archmages can't compare to. Let me ask you, who among them can achieve the same origin of ice and fire, and use the same origin of ice and fire to stimulate the other magic elements to drive the wind, earth, space, light and darkness magic elements? Although you are only a support mage, you are the first all-element mage in the whole continent. I remember that they call you Ice and Fire Chef. Indeed, your strength lies in ice and fire. This title is most suitable for you. Moreover, what I don't understand is that the speed of your magic improvement is very fast. It is reasonable to say that you should already be able to use higher-level magic. How can it be maintained at the same level? Haha. Today, I have something delicious to eat again." Nian Bing's cold eyes flashed and she said with a frown, "If that's the case, we still have to fight. Do you want to know why my magic is still stuck at the same level? I only understood it these past few days. Fatso, today I will let you see the qualitative leap in my magic." Fatso laughed, of course, I am still waiting to eat your 7-element feast. Just like before, I will give you time to chant the incantation. Move your mouth, it's not bad to move a bit before the meal. You seem to have put on quite a bit of weight recently. Let's see how much your qualitative leap will affect me." Nian Bing's gaze changed and became abnormally persistent. From the beginning to the end, he was afraid that his gaze would stop on the 7 exposed gemstones. "We have known each other for a long time. I have never introduced you to the guys I eat with. They are my closest friends." Fatso said with some curiosity, "Yes. I have never heard you mention them before. These 7 blades are stranger than the one before. Tell me about them." The golden-haired youth's eyes shone with infatuation. Sigh of the snow goddess, morning dew. With a light hum, a blue light suddenly bloomed, and the ice element on the mountain peak became stronger. Roar of the fire god, righteous young blade. Red light, this was a divine weapon representing fire. Chant of the wind of freedom, proud heaven blade. Green light, this was a divine weapon representing wind. Melody of the earth's awakening, long life blade. Yellow light, this was a divine weapon representing earth. Hexagram of the 100 changes, Xuanji blade. Silver light, this was a divine weapon representing space. Dawn that connects heaven and earth, holy radiance blade. White light, this was a divine weapon representing light. Curse of the eternal hell, demon devouring blade. Black light, this was a divine weapon representing darkness. The 7-colored light suddenly bloomed, interweaving into a gorgeous rainbow of colors. The golden-haired youth, the book already introduced him as Nianbing. I don't know why the author still mentioned him here and in front. With a smile on his face, he looked at the 7-colored light and said, "They are the 7 divine weapons. They are the 7 divine blades, and they are also magic staffs that contain the 7 elements of ice, fire, wind, earth, space, light, and darkness. Most importantly, they are my kitchen knives." The smile on Fatso's face suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a serious expression. He could clearly feel that Nian Bing's aura was clearly different from before. A layer of faint golden light appeared on his body. That was the peak of Doqi, God Doqi. His upper body slightly leaned forward, and his fat body was wrapped in the golden light. At this moment, it actually looked like a solid heavy sword. Yes, he was a god-tier warrior with the highest title among warriors. At the same time, Nian Bing also knew that this Fatso was a sword saint divine-tier warrior. Just as she had thought at the beginning, Fatso's strength was absolutely equal to that of a demigod. Nian Bing's eyes shone brightly. She raised both of her hands, and her slender and nimble fingers under the movement of her forearms quickly drew 2 hexagrams in front of her, one red and one blue. They looked very distinct. Goddess of ice and snow, please bestow upon me the eternal ice, god of fire. Please bestow upon me the flame of nirvana of the phoenix. In my name, the limit of ice and fire merge. The 7 gems on the 7 blades lit up at the same time. The red and blue light intertwined, and suddenly rushed toward his body with the other 5 colors. The 7-colored light wrapped around Nian Bing's body. With the red and blue hexagrams as the guide, a layer of strange enchantment of all elements was formed. The young man's eyes revealed a strange smile, and said to Fatso, I will let you try my new special magic, shadow puppet of all elements. The light of the magic suddenly turned, and 7 rays of light suddenly shot out from the 7-colored light surrounding Nian Bing's body. Blue, red, green, yellow, silver, white, and black. The 7-colored light stopped in front of the 7 magic blades. Nian Bing's eyes shone brightly, and a strange circular symbol appeared between her eyebrows. It was actually a blurry eye. In an instant, a huge amount of spiritual power floated out and merged with the 7-colored light that shot out. The 7-colored light began to change, and the 7 rays of light almost simultaneously condensed into a 7-colored human figure. It was not an illusory human figure, but was completely composed of magic elements. Regardless of height or appearance, it was exactly the same as Nian Bing. It was just that because it was composed of energy, its body was abnormally transparent. The 7-colored shadows stretched out their hands at the same time, and pulled out the 7 blades that were originally inserted into the ground. In an instant, blue, red, green, yellow, silver, white, and black lights of the 7 colors suddenly lit up. The 7 shadows and the 7 blades seemed to have completely merged into one. The 7-colored shadows moved at a speed that was almost indiscernible to the naked eye. In just a flash, they had already surrounded Fatso in the center. Fatso looked at the 7 shadows that surrounded him with strange auras in shock, and asked doubtfully, Nian Bing, what is this thing that you used? Is it still magic? The 7 puppets moved at the same time with their 7 peerless divine sabers. 7 completely different auras interweaved into a huge net that rushed towards the fatty at the same time. There was no gorgeous splendor, no grand momentum. The 7 different treasured sabers rushed forward at the same time. The saber lights on the sabers were more than a foot long, instantly sealing off all the paths around the fatty. The 7 puppets were like brothers from the same mother, cooperating with incomparable tacit understanding. Fatso had always been proud of his strong defense, but facing the 7 peerless divine blades, he didn't dare to be the slightest bit careless. His god's do-chi suddenly burst out, and his fat body suddenly moved to the side, waving his hands at the same time. Ding, 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 7 crisp sounds rang out, and the puppets were all knocked back 1 zhang away. However, the 7 shadows immediately merged back together, and the blade lights were still the same, once again attacking Fatso. The light on the blades was an extremely compressed magic power, added with the sharpness of the blades, and the amplification of the 7 top-grade gems. Although the momentum was not that great, the attack power was absolutely terrifying. At this moment, Nian Bing wasn't relaxed. Controlling the 7 puppets required her full concentration. After more than 10 battles in the past 3 months, she already had a comprehensive understanding of Fatso's strength. As long as she was slightly careless, Fatso would be able to find an opportunity to destroy the shadow puppets. The 7 puppets' strength was equivalent to 7 martial fighters. The reason why they could entangle Fatso and contend against him, other than the perfect coordination under the control of Nian Bing's mental power, there was also the interconnection between the 7 elements of magic and the 7 magical blades. Combined with these characteristics, they were able to make Fatso somewhat wary. Deep marks continuously appeared on the rocks at the top of the mountain. Fatso's body was abnormally agile, and with the addition of his tyrannical god's do-chi, The shadow puppet's speed was already a little overwhelming. However, he was still able to barely maintain the momentum. The light in Fatso's eyes gradually changed, from the initial surprise to a serious expression. Originally, he thought that Nian Bing would be able to contend against him. Without 10 or 8 years, it would definitely be impossible. However, he never thought that Nian Bing would actually find such a method. With the special characteristics of all elements of magic and the cooperation of the 7 magical blades, she was actually able to trap him. Looking at the flickering blades, Fatso's heart was filled with apprehension. Although he was very confident in himself, he still didn't dare to use his fat body to take on the god's Do-Chi blade head-on. The attack method of the 7 shadow puppets was very simple. They relied on speed. Although the god's Do-Chi was powerful, it wasn't very effective against the shadow puppets that were formed entirely from magic elements. The speed of the shadow puppets was completely driven by magic elements. Once they moved, there were only 7 faint afterimages in the air. Even Nian Bing, who was controlling them, had to use her heaven's eye to see the shadow puppet's movements. No matter how strong Fatso was, he could only rely on his powerful senses and use his Do-Chi to force the shadow puppets to retreat again and again. Against these shadow puppets that could automatically absorb magic elements from the outside world, his consumption of Do-Chi was much greater. For a moment they were completely in a stalemate. Nian Bing naturally wasn't in a hurry. What she wanted to do was to deplete Fatso's Do-Chi as much as possible, then find an opportunity to win. The 7 colored figures continued to flicker as if they didn't know fatigue. More and more deep marks appeared on the ground. Although Fatso's god's Do-Chi was still powerful, the continuous depletion of Do-Chi was a little unbearable for him. Finally, Fatso made his move. His god's Do-Chi exploded and suddenly forced the 7 shadow puppets to retreat. In the next moment, his huge body rushed forward and arrived in front of Nian Bing. He punched towards Nian Bing's chest. The best way to defeat the shadow puppets was to cut off their source. This was the first time he had taken the initiative to attack in a battle with Nian Bing. To be able to force Fatso to this extent, Nian Bing should be proud. There was a hint of mockery in Nian Bing's eyes. Seeing that the fat kid was right in front of him, he did not dodge. Suddenly, a 7-colored halo floated out from his body. It was 7 fist-sized light beads. Each bead carried a surge of magical energy. With Nian Bing as the center, the space within a radius of 30 feet was completely distorted. The dense magical energy seemed to have locked everything in place. Fatso's body that was charging forward at top speed actually slowed down a lot in an instant. In a flash of light, the 7 shadow puppets actually disappeared and reappeared at the same time, once again surrounding Fatso. However, this time it was different. Fatso's speed was greatly reduced in the distorted 7-colored light, but the 7 shadow puppets' speed was multiplied. The 7-colored light flashed at the same time. Although Fatso had pushed his god's fighting aura in time to force them back, 7 light scars still appeared on his body. Fatso was shocked. The energy released by Nian Bing's body was too strange. Under the full force of his god's fighting aura, his huge body shone with a golden light like the sun. Without daring to stop, he heavily punched the ground, causing the entire mountain peak to collapse. Fatso borrowed the strong recoil to soar into the sky, barely managing to escape the distorted 7-colored energy. However, there were more than 10 scars on his body. Those were not simple wounds. The 7 magical auras attached to the 7 blades pierced into his body like sharp needles. Under the control of Nian Bing, the 7 energies that were originally complementary to each other immediately turned from complementary to counteracting each other as they entered his body. The surging magical energy quickly destroyed his bodily functions. If it were not for his extremely strong defense that filtered out most of the energy, his internal organs would have been torn apart by the 7 different energies. Surrounded by the distorted 7-colored energy, Nian Bing's body floated in the air. Fatso had left the range of this energy. Although the 7 shadow puppets continued to attack him, they could not pose a threat to him for the time being. Fatso's body suddenly began to shine with a 7-colored brilliance. The first light that appeared was yellow, followed by red, blue, green, silver, white, and black. Every time a type of light appeared, a type of magical energy that was attacking his body would be forced out. After the 7 types of light flashed one after another, the energy that was bursting out from the dozens of blades was no longer a threat to him. Even so, it was still a false alarm. The fat on his face trembled slightly. The yellow light condensed into a long sword made of pure energy, carrying a golden do-chi. He swung it and formed a ball of light, causing the 7 shadow puppets to be unable to get close to him. Nian Bing looked at Fatso in surprise. Impossible! How can you also know all types of magic? Originally, he thought that Fatso would be seriously injured in the attack just now. But looking at the current situation, although Fatso was injured, the injury was not as serious as he had imagined. Especially when Fatso's body continuously flashed with 7-colored light, he could clearly feel the magical elements being forced out. Fatso dealt with the 7 shadow puppets while angrily saying, "You cunning brat! You actually awakened your innate domain. I was tricked by you. Damn it, what kind of lousy domain is that?" Nian Bing laughed. "This is the secret of why I have never been promoted to Archmage. The innate domain absorbed a large amount of my innate aura and magical energy. It just awakened the day before yesterday. Your first test, it's not bad, right? I gave this domain a name. It's called the Heaven's Eye domain, because it was formed with the help of the Heaven's Eye acupoint, and it can only be fully displayed with the help of the Heaven's Eye acupoint. My domain doesn't have any offensive abilities, it only has 2 types of abilities, amplification and defense. But, without its offensive abilities, its defensive and amplification abilities have greatly increased. How about it? It's not bad, right? Once the shadow puppets are in my domain, they can display more than double their original power. Even with your god's do-chi, I'm afraid it will be very difficult to deal with. Good brat, you really have become stronger. If I don't show my true abilities, it won't be easy to defeat you. Take my Heaven's Defying Strike. Let's see if your domain and shadow puppets can defend against it." Fatso's figure had already disappeared. His whole body was like a huge sun, the golden light continuously rising. The do-chi sword in his hand was raised high above his head, and the air seemed to have been sucked dry. The 7 shadow puppets' speed was actually naturally carried away. The abnormally huge pressure caused the floating Nian Bing to be startled, and he unconsciously floated backwards. The 7 shadow puppets also flew over, fusing into his Heaven's Eye domain. Only in this way could the 7 shadow puppets display their most powerful abilities. These 7 shadow puppets were originally impossible to form with Nian Bing's own ability. But after several months of continuous effort, after opening his spiritual cavities, he finally found a way to use the 7 magic blade. The 7 magic blades were embedded with gems. The magician was the core of these 7 shadow puppets, which was why they could display such a powerful ability, even trapping the divine descent master Fatso. Now, Fatso was clearly enraged. After all, Nian Bing's strength had only increased recently. Facing Fatso, he didn't have the slightest confidence. The strong light suddenly disappeared, and Fatso seemed to be holding a solid longsword in his hand. His face was very calm, and with a light wave of his right hand, a light indistinguishable to the naked eye fluttered out, heading straight for Nian Bing's domain. Nian Bing's expression changed slightly. He could naturally feel that this was an extremely condensed and enormous energy. Both of his hands moved in front of him, completely opening his celestial eye acupoint, and the space between his eyebrows instantly glowed brightly. 7 blades in one celestial eye slash. The 7 shadow puppets instantly lined up in a row, raising their 7 magic blades at the same time. At the front was the roaring yang blade of the god of fire, followed by the morning dew blade, the proud heaven blade, the longevity blade, the 4 stars blade, the holy radiance blade, and the demon devouring blade. 7 different lights condensed at one point, and the 7 shadow puppets did the same thing. The celestial eye slash didn't produce a light blade, but a 7-colored light ball. The light ball was very strange, and it was not made up of 7 colors. Instead, it kept flashing, and every time it flashed, it would change into a different light. The light ball was only the size of a fist, and under the identification of the celestial eye acupoint, it accurately locked onto Fatso's heaven-defying slash. As soon as the light ball appeared, the 7 shadow puppets disappeared at the same time, and the 7 divine blades floated around Nian Bing. That small light ball had actually drained all the energy of the 7 shadow puppet. What happened next left Nian Bing dumbfounded. There was no explosion as he had imagined, nor was there any gorgeous light. When the heavenly slash and the celestial eye slash collided, the light ball formed by the celestial eye slash flashed with 7-colored light. Then, with a puff, the 2 attacks actually disappeared completely. It was just a soft sound, but it took away a huge amount of energy from Nian Bing and Fatso. Fatty's clothes had already been torn into strips, and he stared at the place where the 2 forces had collided with each other, dumbfounded. He let out a strange cry. What the F***ck, it can't be, how can it be so fast? Nian Bing stared blankly, and said, Fatso, what do you mean by extreme misfortune comes to light? Fatso smiled bitterly. Isn't it simple? The attack power of the ball you sent out was exactly the same as the heavenly slash I sent out. Under an indescribable and miraculous situation, the 2 forces completely cancelled each other out. Because the explosive power reached a certain level, and the 2 forces were exactly the same, there would be this extreme misfortune comes to light situation. You can understand it as them cancelling each other out. Don't ask me where the explosive energy went, I can't explain it clearly. Although I've long heard of extreme misfortune comes to light, this is the first time I've seen it. Brat, you're pretty good. The power of your attack has already reached the level of a forbidden spell, and it's a single target forbidden spell. It looks like it won't be easy to deal with you. But I don't understand, why did you suddenly become so powerful? Just an innate domain shouldn't be able to bring you to your current level. Even an archmage wouldn't be able to do anything to you with the amplification and defense of your strange, innate domain. Nian Bing's eyes were filled with emotion. Looking at the 7 magic blades floating around her body, she said with a smile, Of course, although an innate domain is very strong, it's impossible for it to raise me to such a level. That attack just now wasn't just my power, it was also the power of my 7 magic blades. Only by relying on the effect of the 7 top-grade god stones could I barely contend against you. Fatso, I know you've been holding back all this time. Even now, you're still far from using your full strength. But if you want to beat me up so miserably in the future, I'm afraid it won't be easy. Fatso nodded and said, That's right, you've reached your current level. I can easily kill you, but it won't be easy to defeat you. Actually, I can't say I've been holding back. If I want to defeat you, I'll need to use my true strength. At that time, the energy of my attack won't be something I can control. I can only destroy you. But I'm still counting on you to cook for me. How could I bear to kill you? Although I've long expected this day to come, I didn't think it would come so quickly. Your Tian Yen Meridian and those 7 lousy blades of yours actually forcefully raised you to such a level. Nian Bing dispersed her innate domain and withdrew her 7 magic blades. Floating in the air, she respectfully bowed to Fatso. Senior, although you've often beaten me and forced me to cook for you in the past 3 months, and even captured my beloved Feng Nu, you've also given me a lot of things. Without your guidance and encouragement, the current Nian Bing wouldn't be here. Since you can't defeat me without killing me, then shouldn't our battle every 10 days be cancelled? Please return Feng Nu to me. Nian Bing will always remember your kindness. Chapter 119. A smile appeared on Fatso's face. With a flash of yellow light, His tattered clothes disappeared, and were replaced by a new set of clothes made entirely of energy. Boy, you're very smart, but I can't come out with your wife yet. Although you've made some progress in your seven-element magic, it's still far from enough to travel the continent. Hurry up and hand over your sabers. Only when you can reach your previous state without relying on these 7 sabers will the battle between us truly be considered to be over. No matter how good a weapon is, you don't know if you can use it. Do you understand what I mean? Nian Bing stared blankly for a moment. Seeing the smile in Fatso's eyes, she suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. She took out the 7 divine blades from her space ring. Senior, I'm very willing to continue this battle with you because it's very beneficial to me. However, can you let me see Feng Nu first? It can be considered as a reward for my efforts these days. Although he always knew that Fatso didn't have any hostility, but as the saying goes, being too concerned makes one confused. The longing in his heart for Feng Nu forced him to say these words. Fatso nodded. Just as he was about to agree to Nian Bing's request, his face suddenly changed. The fat on his fat face trembled. How is this possible? Damn, it's actually a distress signal. Boy, it seems that we have to put aside the matter between us for the time being. At least now you have the ability to protect yourself. Come with me first. Put away your treasured blades. They'll be life-saving items when the time comes. Don't ask anything, just follow me. Saying this, his body was shrouded in a yellow light as he hurriedly flew in a certain direction. Nian Bing didn't know what happened to Fatso, but Feng Nu was still in his hands. Nian Bing could only follow him as fast as she could. Fatso flew very fast. The speed of flight with Do Qi was something that no magic could reach. At Fatso's level, Do Qi consumption was nothing to him. The consumption of battle energy was nothing to him. After flying for a while, the fatty in Nian Bing's eyes turned into a yellow dot. Just as he was feeling anxious, Fatso suddenly stopped. When Nian Bing approached, he casually waved a yellow rope and wrapped it around her waist. He wrapped it around Nian Bing's waist and said urgently, "Relax your body. Use wind magic to reduce your weight. I'll take you with me. We have to get there as soon as possible." After knowing Fatso for so long, this was the first time that Nian Bing saw such an anxious expression on his face. But Fatso didn't allow her to ask, so she didn't say anything. Under the effect of Do Qi, Fatso quickly flew with Nian Bing towards the north. At this time, Fatso's speed was fully displayed. Nian Bing truly experienced the strength of a god-tier master. Everything around her became illusory. Reaching the limit of speed was like a meteor chasing the moon. The strong wind in the sky made it impossible for Nian Bing to breathe. She simply held her breath and changed to internal breathing. Her body absorbed the natural spiritual energy and various magic elements to replenish her body. The magician flew for 2 days and 2 nights. In the middle, Fatso only stopped once to let Nian Bing eat something while he meditated to recover his Do Qi. When Nian Bing finished eating, the two of them flew again. They were still flying towards the north. Nian Bing's heart was filled with questions. Fatso's strength was already so great. What could make him so anxious on the continent? At first, he thought of many possibilities, but later, he simply stopped thinking about it. While cultivating, he pondered how to perfect his 7 elemental magic. Although the appearance of the natural domain greatly increased Nian Bing's strength, it also absorbed a lot of his magic. Now that he was cultivating, it was the process of truly increasing his strength. Nian Bing understood that she was only a step away from becoming an archmage. Her mental strength was already sufficient. As long as her magic reached the level of 10th step magic, then she could become a true archmage, a full archmage. At that time, as long as she continued to work hard, it wouldn't take too long for her to have the qualifications to challenge the priests of the Ice Goddess. Father, Mother, are you really not dead? If that's the case, just you wait. Nian Bing will definitely save you as fast as possible. Thinking of the Ice Goddess priests, Nian Bing immediately thought of the acupuncture points Fatso mentioned. In these 3 months, she had gained a lot of knowledge from Fatso. According to Fatso, the ice goddess priests had only opened 2 acupuncture points. The human body was a miraculous domain. In another part of the continent of gods, the gods living there were actually all humans. However, because of the harsh environment, the people of that time were much stronger than ordinary humans. Some of them had even opened more than 2 acupuncture points, possessing powerful abilities that ordinary people couldn't compare to. If she could also open 2 acupuncture points, then the ice goddess priests wouldn't be so frightening. However, according to what the fatty had said, it was very difficult to open any acupoint. It was not something that could be achieved through hard work alone. Luck was equally important. Although the acupoints of the human body had a fixed position, opening them required not only a huge amount of energy, but also coincided with the right time, geographical location, and other factors. The 7 acupuncture points of the human body were the Tianyan, Diling, Yunting, Lizhong, West Meridian, Fangjia, and Huangji. Among them, the Tianyan and Huangji were the most difficult to open. One of them represented intelligence, while the other represented vigor and strength. None of the 7 acupuncture points were easy to open. The heavenly eye acupoint was located between the eyebrows, the earthly spirit acupoint was located in the middle of the foot, the heavenly hearing acupoint was located an inch below the ear, the Lizhong acupoint was located half an inch below the thoracic vertebrae, the West Meridian acupoint was located 3 inches below the navel, and the Fangjia acupoint was located 1.2 inches above the back. The Huangji acupoint could be located anywhere in the human body. Once the Huangji acupoint was opened, the location it was located at would become the strongest point. The Huangji acupoint wasn't just a single acupoint, it could open multiple acupoints. According to Fatty, there were people who had opened 3 Huangji acupoints in the godly continent. Nian Bing naturally wanted to open the Huangji point the most, but he also knew that it was too difficult for him. Only the heavens knew how many years those old monsters in the godly mainland had cultivated. After flying at full speed for 2 days and 2 nights, even a powerhouse like Fatso showed a trace of fatigue on his face. However, his speed didn't slow down at all. On the other hand, Nian Bing's flying didn't affect his cultivation at all. In these 2 days, not only did he recover the energy he used to cast the shadow puppet, but his mana also increased. After opening the Tianyan point, his speed of absorbing mana was several times faster than before. Naturally, it was much easier for him to cultivate. Every day, he would have a new feeling. Whether or not he could become stronger was only a matter of time for Nian Bing. In the distance, a huge mountain range appeared in front of Nian Bing's eyes. Although they were flying very fast, the mountain range was very wide. Therefore, he could see the pot clearly. Fatso, who had been flying towards the north, suddenly slowed down. His body turned in the air and rushed downwards. Nian Bing's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that they had arrived at their destination? At this time, Fatso's voice clearly entered Nian Bing's ears. Let's not go there. You have to be vigilant at all times. When the time comes, I may not be able to save you. This mountain range is located at the border between the Longmu Empire and the Ice Moon Empire. It's called the Cold Mountain Range, and it's cold all year round. Hearing Fatso's words, Nian Bing was shocked. Although he had a high estimation of flying speed, he didn't expect that he and Fatso would be able to cross the northern part of the Huarong Empire and the entire Longmu Empire in just 2 days. Faint clouds and mist constantly drifted above the mountain ridge. Waves of cold air blew in their faces, and the ice element in the air clearly became more intense. The waves of cold air caused Nian Bing to shiver involuntarily. He hurriedly took out the righteous yang saber from his spatial ring and used the heat from the saber to expel the cold air. Opening his mouth and exhaling a mouthful of hot air, the water in his breath actually condensed into ice shards and fell to the ground. Nian Bing was very surprised. It was really cold. No wonder his magic couldn't resist this cold air. In such a cold place, who was Fatso looking for? Without waiting for Nian Bing to think about it, Fatso had already brought him close to the cold mountain range. Fatso seemed to be very familiar with the situation here. He flew above the mountain range with ease, as if he was looking for something. Suddenly, Fatso's eyes lit up. It's been a while. I almost forgot the place. I hope they're all right. At this time, a blue light quickly approached from the distance. Fatso's heart skipped a beat and he stopped in midair. Nian Bing, who was being carried by Fatso, suddenly rushed forward and slammed into him. Fortunately, Fatso's body was thick enough, so he wasn't injured. Why did you suddenly stop? Do you want me to fall to my death? Nian Bing complained. At this time, he also noticed the blue light quickly approaching. Thinking of Fatso's words, his heart suddenly tightened. The blue light was already in front of him in the blink of an eye. A cold voice sounded, "Stupid Fatso, why are you here? Did you send out the signal for help?" Fatso laughed and said, "Sorries, I haven't seen you for so many years. You still look like a dead man. I also received the signal for help and rushed here as fast as I could. I think something happened to Boss and the others." Nian Bing poked his head out from behind Fatso and looked at the blue figure. At this time, his heart was full of doubts. Fatso and this Sorries knew each other, and it looked like they were friends. Did a master like Fatso have a boss? And his boss was asking for help. Heavens! What kind of world was this? How could so many masters suddenly appear? The person who appeared in front of him was a woman. Her blue dress covered her charming body, and her slender figure was actually about the same height as Nian Bing. Her silver-white hair fluttered in the cold wind, and her clothes looked very thin, but she didn't look cold at all. Her blue eyes, which were similar to his, were filled with a thick chill. Seeing this person, Nian Bing couldn't help but think of the Ice God Tower. His heart sank and he asked, "Are you from the Ice God Tower?" Sorry's gaze turned and he also saw Nian Bing. "The Ice God Tower is nothing. Stupid Fatso, you actually brought a human here?" Nian Bing retorted, "What do you mean a human? Aren't you a human?" Sorry snorted disdainfully and didn't say anything else. His body suddenly turned around, and he rushed towards a valley in front of him. Fatso glared at Nian Bing and said, "You should stop talking. If you provoke my Sorries again, I won't let you off." Nian Bing looked at him in surprise and said, "Your Sorries? Is she your wife?" Fatso said somewhat awkwardly, "Not yet, but I will work hard. I believe she will be soon." "Fatso, you are having a wet dream again. Aren't you afraid that Sorries will hear you and freeze your fat?" The cyan light was like a meteor, and in the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Nian Bing and Fatso. It was a tall middle-aged man, dressed in cyan clothes, and he had an otherworldly aura. Seeing this person, Nian Bing couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. But when he thought about it carefully, he realized that he didn't have any impression of this person in his memory. Fatso said angrily, "Damn it, Caradiris, can't you give me some encouragement? Although Lil Bing doesn't like me now, it doesn't mean she won't like me in the future." Caradiris laughed and said, "All right, you lazy Fatso, hurry up and leave. Did you forget the signal for help?" Hearing the words Caradiris, Nian Bing's heart moved. He suddenly realized that he had definitely heard this name before, and it had a deep impression. Just as he was thinking about it, Fatso and Caradiris moved at the same time. They followed the direction where Sorries had disappeared and headed towards the valley. Just as they passed by the ice peak, Nian Bing suddenly felt a spring-like warmth blowing on his face. His whole body was warm and indescribably comfortable. A large expanse of green appeared in front of his eyes. This was actually a warm valley. In the cold mountain range where the temperature was extremely low, there was actually such a good place. This was something he had never expected. Fatso and Caradiris's figures floated down. There were 3 people on the ground, and they looked towards them. One of them was a tall man in silver clothes, and his appearance was 70% similar to Caradiris. The other was a woman in blue clothes, and naturally, it was Sasari's. The last person made Nian Bing's eyes widen. It was the fire Garamandes that he hadn't seen for many days. In an instant, all kinds of thoughts kept surging in Nian Bing's mind. He suddenly turned around, grabbed Fatso's collar, and asked, "Damn Fatso, you are also a dragon, right? You are the Earth Dragon King?" All kinds of doubts about Fatso were completely solved at this moment. Why did he have such a powerful strength? Why did he know both magic and martial arts? Why did he have such a strong defense? Why did he emit the radiance of 7 magic when he broke his shadow puppets? Why did he know that he was a chef? Everything was solved because of the identity of this Earth Dragon King. In an instant, he understood everything. Nian Bing's anger was not without some luck. At least, he was now sure that Fatso was not his enemy. Fatso slapped Nian Bing's hand away. He laughed and said, "Kid, your reaction is very fast. Garamandes, it was you who exposed us." Garamandes said unhappily, "Damn Fatso, you must have eaten a lot of good things from Nian Bing, and you still blame me. However, why did you bring Nian Bing here? He is only a human. I'm afraid he won't be able to deal with the things we are about to face." When Nian Bing saw Garamandes, an indescribable feeling of familiarity rose in his heart. "Stinky Fire Dragon, it was you who sent Fatso to deal with me, wasn't it? Hurry up and tell him to release Feng Nu." Garamandes walked to Nian Bing's side and affectionately put his arm around his shoulder. He smiled and said, "Come, let me introduce you. This is the beautiful young lady of the 7 Dragon Kings, Ice Dragon King Sasaris." As he said that, he pointed at the long-haired beauty in blue clothes. Sasaris looked at Nian Bing and frowned slightly. He said, "Garamandes, you and Fatso seem to be very familiar with this human?" Nian Bing now understood that Sasaris was indeed not a human. No wonder she said that before. Garamandes laughed and said, "Of course we are very familiar with him. If you have eaten his cooking, you will quickly become familiar with him." "Oh, so that means he is a famous chef?" The silver-robed man on the side came over with some surprise. Garamandes nodded and said, "And he is also a magician, Nian Bing. This guy is the most useless one among us. Space Dragon King Kadiris, except for escaping, his other abilities are ordinary. You don't have to pay attention to him." "So it's you." Caradiris also came over. "I don't need to introduce you, I think you know who I am." Nian Bing nodded and said, "It's really you. We met last time. You are the White People's guardian dragon, Wind Dragon King Caradiris." Kadiris rushed to say, "And he is also my dear brother." Caradiris frowned slightly. Garamandes said, "How are you 2 brothers? If you have half of Carlody's temper, you wouldn't be like this now." Finally, Garamandes' gaze fell on Fatso. "This Fatso must have eaten a lot of good things from you. You have to remember, he is the laziest, the most delicious, and also the fattest among the 7 of us, Earth Dragon King Papaliacas. If you want to take revenge, remember his name. You have to use your own strength. I hope to see you squeeze a few pounds of oil out of him. Scared? Humph, I don't see anything scary about him," Nian Bing said in annoyance. Fatso's veins on his forehead were throbbing. "Bah, not that kind of fear, it's a handkerchief. Who cares what kind of fear you are, let my Feng Nu out first. Garamandes, I need you to give me an explanation." Fatso muttered, "Looks like it'll be difficult to eat the 7-element feast again. Let her out then." With a wave of his hand, a red figure appeared in front of Nian Bing. It was Feng Nu, whom he had not seen for several months. Seeing Feng Nu appear, the Space Dragon King Kadiris' eyes lit up like hearts. Caradiris and Sasaris both looked surprised. Obviously, it was because of Feng Nu's radiance. Feng Nu's expression did not change much, but her face was full of joy. She suddenly threw herself into Nian Bing's arms. Nian Bing. Tears flowed down her face. For the past few months, she had been in Fatso's interspatial bag. Although she could see everything outside, the loneliness in the interspatial bag and Nian Bing's continuous efforts had already made her emotional. Now that she was finally free, how could she control the emotions in her heart? She could no longer care about how many people were around. When Nian Bing saw Feng Nu crying when she saw her, she misunderstood and thought that Fatso had made her suffer. She immediately glared at Fatso. Fatso was stunned and said, "Why are you looking at me? I didn't do anything. If you don't believe me, you can ask your wife." Only then did Feng Nu remember that there were other people around. She quickly left Nian Bing's arms and wiped the tears on her face. Nian Bing nodded gently and said, "Although Fatso captured me back then, he also gave me a lot of pointers in martial arts. Nian Bing, it's been hard on you these days. You've lost weight." Nian Bing smiled bitterly and said, "Of course I lost weight. I was beaten up every 10 days and forced to cook for Fatso. I spent most of my remaining time cultivating. I tried to save you as soon as possible." Fatso chuckled and said, "You can't blame me for this. Garamandes asked me to do this. It has nothing to do with me. If you want to take revenge, you can look for him." Garamandes looked at Fatso with a faint smile and said, "I asked you to look for Nian Bing and think of a way to help her, but I didn't ask you to eat her cooking. Your intentions are not pure." Nian Bing looked at Garamandes in confusion. Although she had already guessed the gist of it, she couldn't help but ask, "Garamandes, what's going on?" Garamandes smiled and said, "It's very simple. Something happened to our 7 dragon kings. Originally, we gathered everyone to discuss countermeasures, but this Fatso was too lazy to participate in the meeting. I had no choice but to go to his lair in the ice cave in the extreme north and drag him out. Later, when we were on our way here, we passed by Ice Snow City and had a meal at a place called Breeze Fasting. Fatso was full of praise for the food there. I thought of you and introduced your cooking skills to him. In the end, Fatso heard that we had a good relationship, so he volunteered to look for you and help you improve your strength. You should know what happened after that, but I didn't tell him what to do. What he did to you is his own business. Fatso, I really don't understand. What's so scary about Nian Bing that you have to push the responsibility to me?" Fatso said in annoyance, "Why don't you try him out and see what abilities he has? In terms of ability, I, Fatty, am not the strongest among the 7 of us, but I can barely be considered average. But in terms of defense, even Boss Catiadus might not be able to compare to me. After all, I'm the Earth Dragon King, defense is my forte. Nian Bing can break through my defense and injure my body. What do you think I'm afraid of? If you have the ability, you can try to fight him without using forbidden spells or above. It's a waste of my words. This is also the reason why I brought him here this time. I think he should be able to help us." Garamandes looked at Nian Bing in surprise. He was naturally very clear about Nian Bing's strength. In just half a year, he never expected Nian Bing to have improved so much. Even the Earth Dragon King Papaliukas praised him. Hearing Fatso's words, the anger on Nian Bing's face gradually disappeared. He took Feng Nu's hand and said, "Fatso, although you have been tormenting me these days, and you have eaten a lot of my dishes, but overall, you have never really made things difficult for me. Without your help, my magic wouldn't have been able to grow so fast. Now that everything is clear, we are even. I don't hate you, and I don't feel grateful for your kindness." Fatso rubbed his 2 fat hands together. He muttered, "Stinking brat, you don't have to be so heartless. But I have no interest in other food now." You see, a hint of a smile appeared at the corner of Nian Bing's mouth. "You're neither my enemy nor my benefactor. But you can be my friend. I have always liked to make food for my friends and invite them to taste it." Fatso was immediately overjoyed. Good, I will be your friend. Stinking brat, I didn't help you for nothing. Did you think that the beating I gave you once every 10 days was really because I wanted to exercise my body? You little brat, you really don't know how lucky you are. If others asked me to beat you, I wouldn't beat them. I used my god's battle chi to change the various functions in your body, strengthening your body as a whole. I, Fatso, didn't eat your food for nothing. Don't blame me for taking your wife away. If I don't lock her up, how can you cultivate peacefully? Besides, although your wife's improvement speed is not as fast as yours, it is not slow either. She is a very talented young lady. Wind Dragon King Karadiris said in surprise. Fatso, you are actually so kind? That kind of consumption of God's battle chi is enough to put a burden on your body. Fatso gave a silly smile and said, Who asked this brat to make such delicious food? Originally, I didn't want to do that. But after thinking about it, if I don't contribute something after eating so much of his food, I will definitely be eaten by Garamandes. I can't think of any other way, so this is the only way. Nian Bing had been feeling changes in her body recently, but she didn't expect that it was the result of being beaten up by Fatso. She smiled and said, Fatso, I won't thank you. Fatso chuckled and said, You don't need to thank me. Just remember to make more delicious food for me. Sasaris suddenly opened her mouth. Her cold voice immediately destroyed the harmonious atmosphere. Stop talking nonsense. Garamandes, what is the situation here? Why did you suddenly send out a distress signal? Hearing Sasaris' question, Garamandes' smiling face immediately sank. The situation is very serious. Otherwise, I wouldn't have sent out a distress signal. Demanteti is about to give birth, and the enemy suddenly appeared 2 days ago. The enemy is much stronger than we imagined. From their aura, it is very likely that they are the ones who stole Miorda's sealing bottle. 2 days ago, before I sent out the distress signal, the 4 of us Dragon King barely managed to drive the enemy away. However, Demanteti's fetus was affected. I'm afraid that she will give birth prematurely in 1 or 2 days. You also know that we dragons are at our weakest when we give birth. Moreover, after giving birth, it will take several days for the baby to hatch. During this process, not only will Demanteti not be able to attack, but Kajios will also have to protect her with all his strength. The enemy is so powerful that I can only send out a distress signal to ensure their safety. Karadiris frowned and said, That's impossible. We are almost invincible on this continent. How can there be an enemy that requires 4 Dragon King to fight together? Garamandes said seriously, There is nothing impossible in this world. I will only say one. Think about it and you will know why the enemy is so terrifying. Among the enemy's leaders, not only is there a Dark Witch who is not afraid of physical attacks, there is also a Lich who is the ruler of the underworld. Just these 2 fellows alone will bring us a lot of trouble. Hearing the words Dark Witch and Lich, the 5 Dragon King present all fell silent. Having lived for tens of thousands of years, they all understood what these 2 titles represented. Sasaris did not say anything, Fatso frowned, and Kadiris smiled bitterly. It was the Wind Dragon King, Karadiris, who spoke. No matter what, the 7 Dragon Kings are all here. No matter how strong the enemy is, we should be able to deal with it. Let's go in and take a look at Kajios and Demanteti. Saying that, he took the lead and walked towards a spacious cave not far away. The other Dragon King followed closely behind. Nian Bing gave Feng Nu a look and quickly stepped forward. She grabbed Garamandes who was walking at the back and said in a low voice, Let's talk alone. I have something to ask you. Garamandes was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, All right, let's go over there and talk. Nian Bing turned around and smiled gently at Feng Nu, saying, Wait for me here, I will be back soon. Saying that, she walked with Garamandes to the bushes at the side. Nian Bing walked until she was at a place where Feng Nu could not hear her before stopping. Garamandes smiled and said, Don't worry, Fatso bringing you here was a mistake in itself. I will not let you take any risk. Later, I will say goodbye to Fatso and send you out of the cold mountain range. Nian Bing frowned and said angrily, Garamandes, who do you think I am? Do you think I am so afraid of death? From the first time we met until now, you are no longer an enemy in my heart. How can I not help my friends when they are in trouble? Although my strength is meager and nothing compared to the 7 Dragon Kings, I am still willing to use this meager strength to do my part. Garamandes looked at Nian Bing with some surprise. Kid, you have changed a lot. Nian Bing smiled and looked at him, saying, You have also changed a lot. At least in front of your own kind, you no longer call yourself the great Garamandes. Moreover, you don't seem to be as frivolous as I thought. You really have a calm side when you encounter problems. Garamandes said angrily, I just praised you a few times and you come to insult me. Tell me, why did you come here without telling your wife? Nian Bing pondered for a moment before saying, Garamandes, tell me the truth. Who are the enemies you are facing this time? How strong can they be? Is their goal to snatch the remaining Miorda's sealing bottles? Chapter 120. Garamandes nodded and said, That's right, their goal is the remaining few bottles. Now there are still 4 bottles in our hands, we must not let them get them. Our enemy this time is very strong. It can be said that all the dark forces in this continent are not as strong as them. Do you know what a lich is? It is a guy who needs extremely good luck, is extremely persistent in the dark, and needs thousands of years to be able to cultivate successfully. Nian Bing smiled and said, I have heard of a lich, I have even seen a dark witch. Looking at Garamandes's surprised eyes, he told him about the encounter with Hillard that day. After hearing Nian Bing's words, Garamandes said, So you have such an encounter, no wonder you can grow so fast. That blade of yours is indeed very useful against those fellows from the underworld, but it's a pity that you're the one holding it. If it was Dementi who had the Holy Radiance blade, then even a lich wouldn't have to be afraid of him. Nian Bing, do you know? Our biggest problem this time is that we do not have a master who can completely compete with the lich. The strength of the lich has exceeded our expectations, and without the support of the Light Dragon King Demanteti, the battle will be very difficult. It is not too late for you to decide to leave now. Nian Bing smiled lightly and said, I am not a person who goes back on my words. Since I said I will stay, I will definitely stay. However, I must let Feng Nu leave. I asked you to come over. There is another thing, I want you to send her out of the Cold Ridge. Garamandes said, You have met after a long time, will she be willing to leave you? Nian Bing smiled and said, I have my ways. Well, I have roughly understood the situation, let's go back. Wait a minute. Garamandes called Nian Bing. His expression was a little bashful. Nian Bing, after we get through this, I have something to ask you. Nian Bing was stunned. What's wrong with you? What's going on? Garamandes blushed and said, Let's talk about it after we pass this hurdle. Alright, let's go back. Nian Bing nodded and said, You go to the cave and greet the other Dragon King first. I'll talk to Feng Nu about something, then you can send her out of the cold mountain range. Okay? Garamandes nodded and said, This is a small matter. Besides, Feng people and our dragons have some relationship. Sending her out is not a problem, as long as you can persuade her. The two of them returned to the cave entrance. Garamandes went straight into the cave while Feng Nu looked at Nian Bing with concern. Nian Bing took Feng Nu's hand and said softly, Aren't you going to ask me what I said to Garamandes? Feng Nu smiled and shook her head. That's a matter between you men. Everyone should have some privacy. Nian Bing's heart warmed. He caught Feng Nu's elastic waist. After the things that happened in the past few months, although Nian Bing and Feng Nu did not meet, the two of them had a feeling of suffering. Feng Nu did not break away from Nian Bing's hand. Instead, she took the initiative to lean on his shoulder and hug him. Nian Bing hesitated for a moment and said, Feng Nu, I've always wanted to tell you something. Okay, go ahead. The Phoenix Maiden slowly closed her eyes with a warm expression on her face. Nian Bing gritted his teeth and said, The thing I want to say may be related to your background. Feng Nu suddenly opened her beautiful eyes and looked at Nian Bing said in surprise, My background? I was born in the Feng people. The Feng people are my home. How do you know about my background? Nian Bing sighed softly and said, Yes, the Feng people are your home. However, do you know who your parents are? Feng Nu's pretty face instantly lost all color. She said involuntarily, Could it be that you know? Nian Bing held her cold little hand and said, Don't be agitated. Let me finish. I'm just guessing. I'm not completely sure. I still need to verify it. Feng Nu's breathing became a little hurried. How do you verify it? Nian Bing said 4 words in a deep voice, Drip your blood to identify your family. Seeing that Feng Nu was a little stunned, the space ring on his hand flashed with silver light. The small bottle that he had taken from Duke Yiyu's residence suddenly appeared in his hand. It was a bottle made of suet jade. Fresh blood would not rot. Feng Nu's breathing became even more hurried. She looked at Nian Bing doubtfully. Whose blood is this? Nian Bing did not answer. He took out a bowl from the space ring and condensed a piece of ice in it. He then used fire magic to melt the ice into water. He opened the jade bottle and dripped a drop of blood into it. He said, Don't ask whose blood it is first. Drip a drop of blood into it. If the blood can fuse, I will naturally tell you. If his guess was correct, he would naturally tell Feng Nu everything. Otherwise, it would be useless to say anything. Why should he disturb Feng Nu's mind? Feng Nu nodded. She took a deep breath and condensed her dou qi into the shape of a needle. She lightly pricked her right index finger. Immediately, a drop of blood fell into the bowl. Nian Bing used light magic to stop the bleeding. Both of their gazes fell on the bowl, deeply gazing at it. The 2 drops of blood were like 2 red flowers slowly blooming. Gradually, the 2 bright red blobs gradually approached each other. Feng Nu nervously clenched her fists. Nian Bing also nervously held her breath. After all, this was related to Feng Nu's background. Finally, the 2 blobs of blood touched each other. Before Nian Bing and Feng Nu could react, the 2 blobs of blood quickly condensed together and could no longer be distinguished. The red color continued to expand. Nian Bing and Feng Nu were somewhat sluggish. The blood identification was a success. For a moment, all kinds of thoughts flashed through Nian Bing's mind. In his mind, he seemed to see the scene from that year, as if he saw everything that had happened between Yu Ruyan and Feng Nu. Feng Nu stared blankly at the blood in the bowl. Her lips began to tremble slightly. Of course, she understood what the fusion of blood meant. Family. These 2 words had always been unfamiliar in her mind. She couldn't think of who the family that Nian Bing was talking about was. However, the blood in front of her was so real. After dealing with the blood and water in the bowl, Nian Bing's face revealed a sincere smile. He opened his arms and pulled Feng Nu into his embrace. He could understand Feng Nu's complicated feelings. What she needed was his comfort. Who is it? Whose blood is this? Feng Nu snuggled tightly in Nian Bing's embrace. It seemed that only this warm embrace was the most desirable. Nian Bing didn't hesitate. He said softly, You have seen this person before. She is Yu Ruyan that you wanted to capture in Aolan City. She is also my godmother. She is your mother, and the Duke of Lan Yu of the Ottoman Empire is your father. Feng Nu suddenly struggled out of Nian Bing's embrace. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. No, how is this possible? Nian Bing smiled bitterly. There is nothing impossible in this world. Not only does the blood of the Feng people flow in your body. Similarly, the blood of the Duke of Lan Yu also flows in your veins. You should know that in the history of the Feng people, Yu Ruyan betrayed her clan and married the Duke of Lan Yu. The daughter they gave birth to was burned to death by the Feng people. In fact, the elders of the Feng people had a deep relationship with my godmother. How could they really hurt her and hurt her flesh and blood? So, the eldest daughter who should have been burned to death. It was you. Feng Nu's pretty face drained of blood. She staggered back a few steps, lied to me. The elders have been lying to me all this time. I actually have parents. My mother is actually a sinner of the clan. Why did I only know all this now? Why? Tears flowed down her beautiful face. She suddenly knew the truth. Feng Nu's heart was filled with all kinds of thoughts. Nian Bing quickly stepped forward and hugged her tightly twice. Feng Nu, do you know how much I envy you? Although you lost the love and care of your parents in your childhood, it was not because they abandoned you. Do you know how much pain your godmother felt because of your death? Now, it has been confirmed that you are their daughter. You have parents, you have biological parents. You are much stronger than me. I know where my parents are, but I can't go find them. Do you know how much I want to be like you and be able to see my parents? Thinking of her own parents who had suffered so much. In addition, being infected by Feng Nu, Nian Bing also cried. A pair of lovers was filled with sadness and joy because of their parents. Gradually, Feng Nu calmed down and stopped crying. She sobbed and said, Nian Bing, what should I do now? Tell me, what should I do now? Nian Bing wiped her tears and said firmly, Of course you should go and see them now. They are your parents. Don't tell me you don't want to spend time with them? Don't you want to be with your parents? Feng Nu raised her head and looked at Nian Bing in a daze. Can I? Can I really do that? Nian Bing, Feng people raised me and taught me powerful skills. However, my mother betrayed the clan. If I meet them, how will the Feng people see me? Will they still let me go back and help the Feng people get through this difficult time? Nian Bing gently kissed the tears on Feng Nu's face and said with a smile, Silly girl, who do you think my godmother is? In fact, she has never forgotten anything about the Feng people. She is also a member of the Feng people. Not to mention that she won't stop you from helping the Feng people. She has already planned to go back to the Feng people to help the clan get through this difficult time. However, the conditions put forward by the Feng people's elders were too harsh. She couldn't bear to part with your father, so she hesitated and didn't go back. As long as you go back, the estrangement between your parents and the Feng people will no longer exist. Everything will become harmonious. At that time, the reason why your mother made up her mind to betray the Feng people was because of your death. Taking a step back, if you are not their daughter, and we continue to develop like this, as long as we truly love each other, there will be a day when you will walk the same path as your mother. Think about it from her point of view. On one side is her beloved husband, and on the other side is the clan that raised her. Godmother has experienced the pain of making a choice too many times. Go back to her side. I can guarantee with my life that she will follow you back to the Feng people to help the clan get through this difficult time. You know her strength very well. With the two of you joining, that ceremony will no longer be a threat to the Feng people. For personal reasons, you must go to the Duke's mansion and return to your parents' side. Feng Nu was silent. She laid in Nian Bing's arms and kept thinking. Every word Nian Bing said deeply touched her heart. She was originally a soft-hearted person. Thinking about the pain Yu Ruyan and her husband had suffered, and thinking about the feelings between her and Nian Bing, her perplexed heart gradually opened up, and the sadness in her beautiful eyes gradually disappeared. Can you go back with me? Nian Bing. I'm a bit scared by being alone. Feng Nu said softly. Nian Bing was overjoyed. He knew that Feng Nu had already acknowledged her parents in her heart. That's right. They were originally a family. Because of all kinds of misunderstandings and tribulations, they were separated. It was time for their family to reunite. At this moment, Nian Bing really wanted to agree to let Feng Nu go with her, but he couldn't. With regards to Garamandes and the other 7 Dragon Kings going through a calamity, he couldn't leave no matter what, even if he knew it was extremely dangerous. He chose to tell Feng Nu everything at this time in order to let Feng Nu stay away from the danger that was about to happen. Slowly shaking his head, Nian Bing said in a low voice, Feng Nu, I'm sorry. I can't go to the Ottoman Empire for the time being. I just talked to Garamandes. He told me that my cultivation has reached the most critical point. I just need to take another step forward to enter the realm of Archmage. Moreover, I have to go back to the Ice Moon Empire. Do you still remember Long Ling? I have to go back to see her. Moreover, the competition I promised her father is already over. I have to go back and let him know. Feng Nu raised her head and looked at Nian Bing. Her eyes were filled with disappointment, but she didn't ask for anything. If it was any other time, she would definitely be able to see that Nian Bing's expression was a bit off. She would be able to hear the insincerity in his word. However, her good heart was in a mess right now. She couldn't think of these things at all. The kind her didn't ask for anything more. She could only silently agree. At this moment, the footsteps of several Dragon Kings sounded. Nian Bing hurriedly separated from Feng Nu. He saw Earth Dragon King Fatso, Fire Dragon King Garamandes, Space Dragon King Kadiris, Wind Dragon King Karadiris, and Ice Dragon King Sasaris walking out together. Karadiris said unhappily, "Hurry up and use your dirty thoughts to think of others. Don't interfere with other people's business." Kadiris said unhappily, "Karo, no matter what, I'm still your brother. Can't you be a little more polite to me?" Garamandes snorted and said, "It depends on who you're being polite to. If you weren't such a good-for-nothing and your personality wasn't so annoying, would he treat you like this?" After saying that, he ignored the Space Dragon King. Nianbing gave a questioning look. Nianbing pulled Feng Nu's hand and said, "Garamandes, I'll leave Feng Nu to you. Feng Nu, I'll ask Garamandes to send you out of the cold mountain range. As long as you keep going east, you'll soon enter the Ottoman Empire. With your strength, you won't be in any danger. Be careful along the way. After I'm done with some things, I'll go to Aulin City to find you, okay? While you're at it, send my regards to Godmother and Godfather." Feng Nu nodded lightly. She looked deeply at Nianbing and said, "I'm fine. Don't worry. Don't think too much. Aren't my parents your parents too?" After saying that, she couldn't help but blush slightly. Nianbing's heart was filled with deep affection. Feng Nu still didn't forget to care about her at this time. With a wife like this, what more could he ask for? She didn't say anything else. She turned around and nodded to Garamandes. Garamandes laughed and said, "Little girl, come on up. This road isn't short and the environment is bad. I'll send you off." After saying that, his tall figure rose into the air. In an instant, the entire valley seemed to have an additional cloud. A red cloud. The Fire Dragon King had already revealed his dragon form. Feng Nu suddenly threw herself into Nianbing's arms and kissed her on the cheek. She said in a voice that only Nianbing could hear, "Take care." Only then did she float up. Her delicate body made a turn in the air and gently landed on Garamandes's broad back like a flying bird. Garamandes raised his head and let out a loud dragon roar. His huge dragon wings flapped lightly. He suddenly accelerated and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Nianbing looked in the direction that Feng Nu and Garamandes left. She stared deeply in the direction that Feng Nu and Garamandes left. She couldn't shift her gaze away for a long time. "All right, don't look anymore. They've already left. This girl is not bad. Back then, I told her that I wouldn't hurt you. She immediately agreed to let me do whatever I want with her. Kid, you must cherish her." Nianbing retracted her gaze and turned to look at Fatso, who was speaking. He had always been with Feng Nu for such a long time. No matter if it was their cohabitation in Great Sky City or when Fatso took her away, Feng Nu had always been close to him. When Feng Nu left, he couldn't help but feel a little empty in his heart, as if he had lost something. He understood that his love for Feng Nu had risen to another level. He couldn't abandon her in this lifetime. That Nianbing. Fatso chuckled. He rubbed his hands and said, "After flying for 2 days and sleeping for 10 days, I'm a little hungry. Look, can you make something to eat? Even barbecue would be good. The barbecue you make is much better than mine." Nianbing glared at him and said, "What do you want to eat? Barbecue Earth Dragon?" Kadiris chuckled and said, "Good, that's a good idea. Fatso has thick skin and a lot of meat and also has oil. If we barbecue it, it will definitely taste good. Fatso said angrily, Kaio, are you itching for a beating? That mouth of yours is really annoying. Kadiri's chuckled and said, What? Don't tell me you want to eat me? Fatso, although I can't beat you, you can't catch up to me either. I won't lose a piece of meat even if I say a few words to you. Just bear with it. Sassaris seemed to hate the space dragon King Kadiris very much. He said coolly, Fatso, if I were you, I wouldn't bear with it. Kadiris was stunned and said, Beautiful Sassaris, why are you stirring up trouble? Sassaris snorted and said, I'm just speaking the truth. Fatso smiled bitterly and said, I'll bear with it. I really can't catch up to this guy. He runs much faster than a rabbit. Kadiris pretended to be angry and said, You Fatso, you actually compared my most handsome space dragon king to a rabbit. After the Dragon King's disturbance, Nian Bing's originally gloomy mood couldn't help but relax a lot. She smiled and said, Fatso, if you want to find him for revenge, I can help you. Kadiri said with disdain, Human, I'm afraid you still don't know how powerful I, the Space Dragon King, am. In this world, as long as I want to go, I can go to any corner of space. Although my nodding strength is a bit lacking, when it comes to twisting and turning, flying and teleporting, among the 7 Dragon Kings, if I say I'm second, no one would dare to say they're first. Nian Bing chuckled and said, Is that so? Fatso's fist is very hard, you'd better think carefully. Fatso seemed to have thought of something. Nian Bing smiled strangely and walked towards Kadiri's in large strides. Kadiri's immediately became vigilant, his body emitting a layer of faint silver light. Damn Fatso, what do you want to do? Fatso chuckled and suddenly shouted, Nian Bing, do it. In an instant, a layer of 7-colored brilliance floated out from Nian Bing's body. The brilliance suddenly disappeared after appearing, and when it reappeared, it had already accompanied Nian Bing to not far from Kadiri's. The distorted 7-colored brilliance enveloped Nian Bing and Kadiri's bodies. Kadiri's was just about to use his space magic to escape from Fatso's pursuit when he suddenly felt his body become sluggish. The space magic that he was so proud of actually failed. Although he was faster than Fatso, but how much faster could a Dragon King be? In this sluggish moment, Fatso had already rushed up and heavily punched towards Kadiri's. At this time, there was already no possibility of dodging. Kadiri's was just about to block, when suddenly, he was shocked to find that Nian Bing's body turned around. In the 7-colored brilliance that was originally emitted by Nian Bing, the silver brilliance suddenly disappeared, and the yellow brilliance suddenly increased. A part of the space energy that he had raised was actually absorbed, and Fatso's earth magic element instantly increased in size. Fatso laughed out loud. That felt good. I've always wanted to teach this guy a lesson. It's been a long time since I've made such a satisfying punch. Nian Bing, you're really something. It actually feels so good to cooperate with this strange domain of yours. Nian Bing smiled slightly and said, Although this sky-eye domain of mine does not have the ability to attack, other than defense and amplification, it also has a special ability. That is to weaken. In my domain, it can greatly weaken the effect of any type of magic element. Therefore, his space transfer cannot be used, and his attack power is also greatly weakened. Hearing Nian Bing's understatement, the Ice Dragon King Sassaris and the Wind Dragon King Karadiris, who were standing at the side, were all moved. They looked at Nian Bing in surprise. At this time, they realized that they had indeed underestimated this human. Being able to use the 7 types of magic had always been the dragon's specialty. However, they knew that they were not as good as Nian Bing's use of magic. Damn, this brat actually tricked me. Kadiri's finally landed from the sky. His face was a little distorted, and his hands were constantly rubbing his stomach. The pain was obviously a huge burden to him. Nian Bing smiled indifferently and said, I'm just helping my friend. Fatso is, but you, at least for now, are not. He was not afraid of Kadiris. Although he could not deal with the weakest of the 7 Dragon Kings, the Space Dragon King, he was confident that Kadiris would not be able to hurt him if he did not use a forbidden spell. He gradually discovered the wonderful use of the Sky Eye domain, and more he realized that the use of this domain far exceeded his expectations. Kadiris was just about to flare up. Sasari's and Karadiras's figures flashed at the same time, and they were already in front of him. Kadiris was stunned for a moment and said, What are you doing? Are you also going to help an outsider? Karadiris said indifferently, Brother, I now understand why Fatso brought him here. Don't tell me you didn't realize how much help his domain is to us? In a situation where Demanteti is unable to move, the help he brings to us is enormous. From Nian Bing's actions just now, they had already understood many things. Sasaris turned to Nian Bing and said, How large an area can your domain cover? Nian Bing thought for a moment. She said, Under normal circumstances, it can cover 3 zhang, and at full strength, it should be able to cover up to 5 zhang, but it cannot be maintained for long. You also know that a domain consumes a lot of magic power. Sasaris nodded and said, This is enough. You are responsible for guarding the cave entrance. Fatso, Ko, and Carlo will assist you. Nian Bing turned to look at the entrance of the cave. Sure enough, the cave was 3 zhang high, which was exactly the range that her domain could cover. With a strange smile on his face, Nian Bing said, I still have some good things to give to your enemy. Since he had decided to stay, he would do his best. Not only for the 7 Dragon Kings, but more importantly, for his own survival. What good things do you have? Fatso looked at Nian Bing doubtfully. You have to know that our enemy is very powerful, and not something that can be dealt with ordinary abilities. It is already very good to have your domain help. Nian Bing knew that he was hinting at her not to be rash, so she smiled and said, Don't worry, aren't you hungry? Then let's eat something first. I remember that you should still have a few cows hidden, right? Make one, but you will have to help, I don't have that much strength. Hearing the word eat, Fatso's eyes suddenly lit up. Good. With a wave of his hand, a majestic bull suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Without waiting for the bull to make a sound, Fatso casually smashed its head with his palm, then pulled the bull from behind and walked outside. You guys wait for a while, I will clean up the bull and come back. Seeing the poor dead bull being pulled away by Fatso, Nian Bing couldn't help but think of Kitty's summoned beast. If the bull that could only shoot out attacks was roasted, how would it taste? Perhaps Kitty would fight with her life. Thinking of Kitty's cute appearance, he couldn't help but reveal a knowing smile, and ask the Wind Dragon King, Karadiris, how are Senior Hillard and Kitty? Chapter 121. Karadiris smiled and said, Good? Not good at all. Kitty is getting more and more naughty. She even wants to come with me this time. She's really too playful. Her father has a headache because of her. However, this girl's talent is still very good. Her little pets have already evolved to the 2nd level. Recently, she's been locked up by her father to practice magic. Nian Bing laughed and said, She's still young. Naturally, she's a little playful. However, Kitty is a good girl. She's very kind. Karadiris smiled and said, Your generation of young people is getting more and more outstanding. It seems that the future hope of mankind lies on you. Nian Bing, I heard from Hillard about what happened to you last time. He was really too reckless. It's not enough. He only acted like that because he loves his daughter. Don't be calculative with him. Nian Bing smiled and said, Let bygones be bygones. I've already made it clear to Senior Hillard. That's good. When things here are over, I'll take you to their place to play if there's a chance. I think Kitty will be very happy to see you. Nian Bing thought of Feng Nu and the hatred she carried. She smiled bitterly and said, I'll have to wait until there's a chance. At this moment, Fatso came back with the cleaned cow. He had used some unknown method to make the cow extremely clean. Even the cow's skin had been removed. Karadiris laughed and said, "Fatso, you're good. I'm afraid you can only be so fast when you're eating." Fatso laughed strangely and said, "Are you making fun of me? I brought this cow. Don't eat it later if you have the ability." Karadiris turned to Nienbing and said, "I also heard that your cooking skills are superb. Show us your skills." Nienbing smiled indifferently and walked to Fatso's side. She said, "You're in charge of rotating the cow. Leave the rest to me. Use a thick piece of wood to skewer the cow." "All right, no problem." Fatso agreed. After a few leaps, he returned and used a thick and long branch to skewer the cow's body. With one hand raised, a cow weighing 400 to 500 pounds was as light as a feather in his hand. Seeing that Fatso was ready, Nienbing also moved quickly, her space ring flashing as she took out dozens of bottles and jars of various sizes. At the same time, she also took out a large condiment box and began adding spices into the various jars, stirring them quickly with a pair of chopsticks. While doing this, he muttered to himself, "Roasting a whole cow is not like roasting a whole lamb. Mutton was fatter and more tender than beef, and it was also more nutritious. Moreover, due to its size, it was easier to cook. This cow weighed at least 500 pounds. If an ordinary chef were to roast it, they would need to roast it for a period of time and eat the cooked meat on the outside first before continuing to roast it. Of course, I didn't need to do that. There were two important aspects to roasting meat. One was the control of the fire. The other one, it was the seasoning. Beef doesn't smell like mutton, so roasting a cow requires a lot of attention to seasoning." While speaking, Nienbing stopped mixing the spices and waved her left hand. With a boom, a huge flame engulfed the entire cow. Fatso was obviously used to it, but it gave the other Dragon King a fright. Nienbing smiled slightly and said, "Don't worry, this is just to get rid of the dirt. It will make the beef cleaner." As soon as she finished speaking, a layer of frost covered the cow's body, and the flame was extinguished, leaving a layer of black carbon on the surface of the cow. Seeing the black cow, Kadiris couldn't help but ask, "Can this thing be eaten? You said you were a good chef, but I don't think so." Fatso laughed. He said, "Then don't eat it later, but I know you're thick-skinned, and I'm afraid you won't be able to resist in the end. Nienbing, show them your prowess." Nienbing smiled and said, "The quality of the food can only be seen after it's completely cooked. As a chef, one's mentality is very important, and I won't be affected by the outside world. The appearance of fire and ice will make the surface of the beef more tender, and the crispy skin will be more fragrant. At the same time, it will be easier to add flavor." A large brush appeared in Nienbing's hand, and after dipping it in the spices, it first brushed the already hollowed-out cow's body. The spices were picked out with the brush, and evenly spread into the cow's stomach. The spices didn't emit a trace of fragrance. Nienbing's movements were very fast. One hand opened the cow's stomach, and the other hand quickly turned his wrist. His movements were like moving clouds and flowing water, without any pause, and every turn of his wrist was perfectly connected. After a while, the inside of the cow's stomach was completely brushed. Nienbing wasn't in a hurry to do the next step, and with a low shout, a scorching flame rose from the ground, and at the same time, he signaled to Fatso. Fatso immediately understood. Originally, he was using one hand to lift the cow, but now he was using both hands, and slowly turned his wrist, so that the cow's body was evenly heated. Nienbing didn't think of a way to remove the carbon layer on the cow's body, and just let it roast in his magic flame. After a while, when the cow's body was evenly heated, Nienbing said to Fatso, "Pay attention, I want to increase the heat of the flame. You need to use your do-chi to protect the cow's body, and don't let the flame continue to burn, but you also need to let the heat in." Roasting a cow wasn't like roasting other small animals, and using ordinary flames to roast it, it might not be cooked even after a day. Fatso nodded, and a layer of faint yellow light enveloped the cow's body. The moment the Doqi appeared, Nian Bing softly chanted 2 lines of incantation, and the light changed, and the color of the flame suddenly turned blue. Wisps of steam continuously rose from the cow's body, and under the roasting heat, the layer of black carbon gradually fell off, and under the rapid roasting heat, the cow's body turned into a light yellow color, and a faint barbecued meat aroma spread out. Nian Bing didn't rush to start, he was still waiting. When cooking, the control of the flame must be extremely precise, and only then could the best food be produced. Sasaris sat on the side in silence, and Kadiri's and Karadiris's eyes were completely attracted by the roasted cow, especially Kadiri's, who had already begun to swallow his saliva. Nian Bing suddenly moved, and his hand brought along a mirage, and a red light naturally jumped into the mirage, and the cow's body was still rotating. The red mirage seemed to have lightly touched the cow's body, and there was no change at all. In an instant, the flames on the ground that were supported by magic turned back to red, and the red light that jumped like a fairy in Nian Bing's hand disappeared at the same time. No one saw clearly what Nian Bing did, even though everyone present except Nian Bing was a god-tier dragon king. They also couldn't see clearly how fast Nian Bing's hand was. Ever since Nian Bing's spiritual power and physical strength had greatly improved, his Rain Dragon's dance knife technique had reached great success, and even he couldn't see clearly how fast his own hand was. Of course, if he wanted to see clearly, it wouldn't be difficult, but he would need to use his third eye to do so. The number 1 knife technique in the world of cooking had been completely integrated into Nian Bing's cooking, and he had already reached the realm of phantom knife that Cha Ji had told him about when he taught him cooking. The knife moved according to one's heart, and he could control everything on the knife purely by feeling. There was no trace of sound, and once the knife was in his hand, it was as if it had become one with his body. The flames had changed from true fire to flexible fire, and the temperature had greatly decreased. Nian Bing moved, and no one knew when his hands had changed into a condiment box and a big brush, and he flipped his wrists. He quickly brushed a layer of seasoning on the cow's body. The seasoning itself didn't seem to have any fragrance, but under the roasting of the fire, the rich aroma of the meat mixed with the seasoning rose up, and the surrounding area was filled with the aroma of the roasted meat. Fatso, who was rotating the branches, was stunned, and his nose kept inhaling the aroma of the meat, as if he wanted to smell until he was full. Minutes and seconds passed, and Nian Bing was very calm. Everything was under his control due to his proficiency in cooking. When the aroma became stronger, and the cow's body began to drip with oil, he changed the magic flame back to true blue fire, and after 3 cycles of applying seasoning, the cow's body was much smaller than before. However, the aroma almost spread to the entire valley. For a moment, all the carnivores in the valley were attracted to the vicinity, but they didn't dare to approach because the Dragon King's dragon aura was too strong. At this moment, even Sasaris, who had a cold expression, had his eyes on the golden cow's body. They were all waiting for the final ripening of the beef. There were marks on the golden cow's body, and they were all caused by the righteous Yang blade. Nian Bing cleaned the condiment box and the brush with ice water and put them in his space ring. He looked at the cow's body carefully and nodded slightly. "It's almost ready to eat." As he said that, he made the first move. He immediately took out the righteous Yang blade, and used magic to force the blade to cut a big piece of roasted meat, and used a branch to pick it up. This piece of meat was enough for him to eat. As soon as Nian Bing finished his actions, 3 figures had already pounced on him. Fatso let out a strange cry and immediately grabbed the cow's 2 hind legs, turned around and wanted to run. However, he was not as fast as Sasaris and the others. Karadiris was the first to arrive, but there was a blue halo in his hands. He pulled hard, and one of the cow's front legs was already torn off with a large amount of beef. For a moment, steam rose, and a rich aroma filled the air. What surprised the Dragon King was that the cow's stomach was also golden. Karadirus purposely went easy on Sasaris, and Kadiris had already caught up. The two brothers hit each other with their palms, and with a bang Karadirus was stronger. He immediately pulled the cow's other front leg off. Kadiris only had time to grab a piece of beef with his bare hands, and the delicious food he received was much less than his brother's. At this moment, a bright laugh sounded. Coming back early is not as good as coming back at the right time. Such fragrant meat. Before Fatso could react, he felt a sudden heat in his left hand. He subconsciously let go, and one of the cow's hind legs had already changed hands. Garamandes's familiar figure appeared beside him. The two of them pulled hard at the same time, and immediately the cow was split into two halves. After snatching the beef, except for the poor Kadiris, the other four Dragon King released a layer of light that belonged to their own element. Although Nian Bing could not tell whether it was magic or combat energy, she could clearly feel the strength of it. Kadiris looked at the others with a bitter face. Damn, you guys are too unkind. You actually left me such a small piece of meat. Fatso laughed mischievously and said, Who told you not to work hard? This is the difference in strength. He was the most complacent of all. Although Garamandes had snatched a lot of the meat in the end, he had the advantage of being close to Garamandes. He had gotten the most meat from the right hind leg and the attached meat. Immediately, he began to eat happily. Nian Bing looked at the five Dragon King fighting over the food. She could not help but think of the time when she was learning from Jia Ji. Whenever she ate a little more, Jia Ji would say that she was like a hungry wolf. Compared to the current situation, a hungry wolf was nothing. These were hungry dragons, and there were as many as 5 of them. Although she did not know how big their stomachs were, she thought that each of them had the strength to eat a cow. At this moment, a gloomy voice came from the cave. Give me some beef. Demantetti is very weak. She needs to replenish some nutrition. Along with the voice, a tall figure walked out of the cave. What followed was an ice-cold aura. It was not cold, but a gloomy coldness that came from the bones. Looking at the man with an evil aura in front of her, Nian Bing knew without asking that he was the Dark Dragon King of the 7 Dragon Kings. She could not help but curiously look at him a few more times. Garamandes was about to eat when he heard the Dark Dragon King's words. Kadiris still could not change his bad habit. He laughed mischievously and said, This is the first time I heard the word thanks from Kadiris. Did I hear wrongly? I got the least just now. Don't think about my delicious food. When exactly is Demantetti going to give birth? Kadiris's gaze turned cold. Stop talking nonsense. If you annoy me, I will eat your meat too. Although his expression was somewhat gloomy, it was hard to conceal the fatigue on his face. He was worried sick about Demantetti giving birth to a child. A dragon's child needed thousands of years of gestation, and the last part of the birth process was the most dangerous. It required constant protection. Demantetti was his most beloved. For thousands of years, for the sake of their child, Kadiris had always been by her side. He was afraid that something would happen to his beloved wife. With a flash, Garamandes arrived in front of Kadiris and handed over the beef leg in his hand. I will give this to her. Don't worry, I haven't eaten a single bite. Kadiris's gaze moved. Among the 7 Dragon Kings, he had fought with Garamandes countless times. Most of the time, it was because of Demantetti. The two had always been incompatible, but after all, there was no real hatred between them. Kadiris nodded and said, I will remember this favor. I thank you on behalf of Demantetti. Garamandes said indifferently, Although I don't like you, we are after all a family. For so many years, I have always wanted to surpass you in all aspects. I also always thought that I would never lose to you in any aspect. But now I have to admit that she was right to choose you. You are a qualified husband. Don't worry, I will not harass you in the future. Kadiris was stunned for a moment. Garamandes, when did you change? His love rival's sudden show of goodwill made him a little uncomfortable. For a moment, He didn't know what to say. Garamandes smiled faintly and said, "She is already your wife. What's the use of thinking about her? It is better to open up and pursue more beautiful things. Go quickly. If the beef is cold, the taste will be much worse. I think Demantetti will definitely love it. This beef is made by the most outstanding human chef." Dark Dragon King Kadiris looked deeply at Fire Dragon King Garamandes, then turned around and walked towards the cave. When he was about to re-enter the cave, he suddenly stopped and turned towards Nian Bing, who was looking at him not far away, and said, "Thank you. Demantetti hasn't wanted to eat anything for a long time. The beef you roasted looks pretty good." After saying that, he turned around and walked back into the cave. Cow Dillis laughed mischievously and said, "Human, I have lived for so many years and have never been thanked by him. I didn't expect him to thank you as soon as you came. It is really unfair. But your roasted beef is really good." Garamandes said unhappily, "Eating isn't enough to shut your mouth. Be careful that I don't steal it from you." Hearing this, Cow Dillis hurriedly increased his speed of swallowing. Sure enough, he stopped talking. Garamandes turned his gaze towards Fatso, who was wolfing down his food, revealing a malicious look. Feeling his gaze, Fatso's heart trembled and said somewhat helplessly, "Okay, I'll give you some. Don't look at me like that, as if you have that kind of hobby." After saying that, he tore off half of the meat and threw it to Garamandes. Garamandes took the meat and scolded jokingly, "You damned Fatso, even if I have that kind of hobby, I wouldn't like you. With your figure. Humph. This meat was roasted by my brother, naturally I should have a share." Seeing everything that happened between the 7 Dragon Kings, Nian Bing couldn't help but reveal a trace of a smile. Although they also quarreled and fought, but the feelings between each other were inadvertently revealed. Thinking about how Fatso rushed over day and night as soon as he received the distress signal, he couldn't help but think in his heart, if humans could be like these Dragon Kings, perhaps there would be no more wars between humans. The meat was quickly finished. Garamandes and the other Dragon Kings' gazes fell on Fatso. Fatso hurriedly stuffed the last mouthful of beef into his mouth. "Why are you looking at me? I only brought 1 cow." Cow Dillis said, "Only a fool would believe you. Hurry up and contribute to us, this beef is really fragrant. Human, how did you do it? The same piece of beef can produce so many different fragrances." Nian Bing smiled faintly and said, "Using a quick fire to roast the meat is originally unable to produce the best fragrance, but during the roasting process, not only did I add all kinds of special seasonings, I also used a knife to cut hundreds of cuts on the cow's body, allowing the seasonings to penetrate deeply into the meat. At the same time, I also injected fire elements into the cow's body, so during the roasting process, every part of the cow's body can be evenly heated, so the taste is naturally good. You are Cow Dillis, right? Actually, the roasted cow's taste can't be said to be the best. After all, there is a limit to the ingredients. Unfortunately, I don't have the best kind of meat." Cow Dillis' eyes lit up and said, "What kind of meat? Hurry up and tell me. As long as it's available on this continent, I have a way to get it for you." Nian Bing smiled and said, "Of course, you are a Dragon King. This kind of delicacy, you can definitely get it, and that is dragon meat. Haven't you heard of the saying, dragon meat in the sky, donkey meat on the ground? If I can roast you, I think that the taste will be very good." Previously, Cow Dillis had questioned his culinary skills, so it was a good time to take revenge. After all, Garamandes was here. As expected, Cow Dillis was furious when he heard this. "Stinky brat, you actually want to roast me? I'll roast you first." A ball of surging flames suddenly appeared, sweeping towards Nian Bing. Nian Bing thought to herself, mimicry magic. Unfortunately, a dragon's mimicry magic could only be used up to the 9th level, and Cow Dillis clearly didn't have any killing intent, so this fire magic was only at the 6th level. The innate domain appeared naturally, a rainbow light suddenly flashed, and the red light dimmed. It had already swallowed Cao Dilla's fire attack, and Nian Bing's innate domain only fluctuated slightly. Garamandi's figure flashed, and appeared in front of Nian Bing, ignoring Cao Dilla's, using his own body to block Nian Bing, and said to him, "Aren't you going to ask where I sent Feng Nu?" Nian Bing smiled slightly, looked at him and said, "Do I need to ask?" His gaze revealed his trust. Garamandi's was stunned for a moment, then laughed and said, "Yes. No need to ask, no need to ask." Nian Bing said, "From now on, you guys don't leave the 50 feet radius of the cave entrance. I will go and arrange some things. I think it will be useful to deal with the enemy." After saying that, he turned and walked outside. Garamandi's was just about to stop Nian Bing, but was stopped by the Wind Dragon King Karadiris. Karadiris smiled slightly and said, "If my guess is right, his arrangements are indeed very useful." Only when night fell did Nian Bing return to the cave entrance. At this time, he was clearly very tired, and directly sat down at the cave entrance. Without saying a word, he immediately entered a state of cultivation. Ever since he was able to cultivate innate, Nian Bing discovered that as long as he could absorb the innate qi between heaven and earth, even if he didn't eat or drink, he wouldn't feel any hunger or thirst. The 5 Dragon Kings were arranged in a formation of 3 behind 2, and together with Nian Bing at the cave entrance were Fatso, Space Dragon King Cao Dillas, and Garamandi's was sitting cross-legged in front of Nian Bing, and on his left and right were the Ice Dragon King, Sasaris, and the Wind Dragon King respectively. Being in the center of the 5 Dragon Kings, and with the constant light and dark auras behind him, the 7 elements were abnormally rich. The large amount of mana that he had consumed before was replenishing at a speed that even surprised Nian Bing. If he could continue to cultivate like this, reaching the realm of Archmage would be a very easy matter. In the state of cultivation, Nian Bing deliberately closed his heaven's eye. This allowed the innate qi to completely circulate within his body. Absorbing the rich magic elements, he felt like a fish in water, and very quickly immersed himself in the wonderful state of cultivation. The innate domain was actually a manifestation of one's own energy. Following the cultivation of the innate domain, Nian Bing gradually understood the origin of his innate domain. The most basic reason for him to be able to possess the innate domain was the body that his parents had given him. His parents were of the 2 attributes of water and fire, and he had inherited the abilities of these 2 attributes, which left him with an extremely good foundation. Cultivating magic from a young age allowed his body to continuously absorb the energy brought about by the magic element. Especially after he had obtained the Stone of Fire and the Stone of Ice Goddess, the absorption process became even faster. As time passed, he gradually obtained magic blades one after another. Although he couldn't completely use their energy at that time, these magic blades had been imperceptibly transforming his body. Through the enormous amount of energy they possessed, his foundation gradually became firmer. Not long ago, he had opened his heaven's eye acupoint, and was able to absorb the innate qi between heaven and earth. This not only allowed his magic to reach a new level, but also allowed his body to enter the innate realm from the Hotian realm. Absorbing large amounts of energy from the 7 magic blades, the foundation of the innate domain that had always been in his body also continuously improved under this kind of cultivation. After 3 months of Fatso's torture, the innate domain had finally been successfully awakened. The reason why his innate domain was so strange was related to the 7 magic blades, Fatso's divine power, and his own body. The effects of its amplification, defense, and weakening abilities had already pushed him to the level where he could contend against an Archmage. Time passed unknowingly. The 5 Dragon Kings were ancient mutated beasts that had lived for tens of thousands of years. Naturally, they wouldn't care about such a small amount of time. Nian Bing had also forgotten about the existence of time during this wonderful cultivation process. There were 7 physical energy spheres that were rotating at 2 different speeds in his body, and they were constantly expanding. The effects of forgetting about time and fully immersing himself in cultivation were definitely the most obvious. Ah! After an unknown amount of time, a wretched cry filled with shock came from within the cave. The entire mountain seemed to be shaken by it. The huge sound wave caused the 5 dragon kings to open their eyes at the same time. Galamandi's whole body trembled, and his expression was already somewhat flustered. They all knew that the radiant dragon king Diamanti was about to give birth, the first of the 7 dragon kings to be born. The appearance of the sound wave and the change in the magic aura in the surroundings caused Nian Bing to wake up from her meditation. The benefits of the Tian Yen acupoint were gradually being unlocked. One of the abilities was to keep one's mind inward, which allowed him to not be disturbed in the process of cultivation. Once there was a change in the outside world, the energy aura would affect the Tian Yen acupoint, allowing Nian Bing to wake up in time. He opened his eyes in confusion and asked subconsciously, "What was that sound just now?" As soon as the words left his mouth, another miserable cry was heard, this time even more intense than before. Garamandes said in a deep voice, "Demanteti is about to give birth. From now on, we have to focus on defense. Even if it's us, the Dragon King, it will take at least 3 to 7 days to hatch a dragon egg. During this period, Demanteti will be extremely weak. Kagiasis will have to do his best to help her tide over this difficult period. And what we have to do is to prevent all living things from disturbing them." Screech. The second miserable cry was heard at this time. Demanteti's voice sounded somewhat hoarse. At the same time, Kagiasis' deep and hurried breathing could be heard from the depths of the cave. Suddenly, Garamandi's complexion changed. "Not good, Demanteti has the purest light physique. It will be much more difficult for her to give birth to a dragon child with Kagiasis than for ordinary dragons. And right now, it's useless for Kagiasis to guard her. As the Dark Dragon King, his energy will only harm Demanteti. Quick, let's go in and help." Sure enough, Kagiasis' voice came from the depths of the cave. His voice had already lost its gloomy aura and was full of anxiety. "Come in quickly, I'm afraid Demanteti is having a difficult birth." 5 Dragon King frowned at the same time. At this time, the enemy could come at any time. And if Demanteti was having a difficult birth, the situation would become very difficult to say. 5 Dragon King rushed into the cave at the fastest speed. Garamandes was afraid that Nian Bing would be lost outside, so he carried her under his arm. Soon, they arrived at the interior of the cave. The deeper they went into the cave, the wider the surroundings became. When they arrived at the depths of the cave, Nian Bing discovered that the situation here was no different from Garamandes' cave. It was just that there was no strange magical aura here, but it was full of vigorous vitality. Perhaps it was because of this enormous vitality that the Dark Dragon King and Light Dragon King chose to give birth here. After all, whether it was light or dark aura, any aura would cause harm to one of them. In the center of the cave, a beautiful giant golden dragon was crawling. Her whole body was emitting an intense golden radiance. The surging aura of light constantly surrounded her body, flickering between light and dark. Light Dragon King Demanteti closed her eyes in pain. Her huge body was constantly trembling. Every time she trembled, some golden liquid would flow out from her body. Dark Dragon King Kagiasis' face was full of anxiety, but he couldn't help. Garamandes flew to Kagiasis' side and whispered, "What's going on? Why is she having a difficult birth?" Kagiasis bitterly said, "I don't know. Maybe it's because our energy is too extreme and too enormous. The energy aura of the childborn is very strange. Demanteti and I have already felt it, but it wasn't until a few days ago when those people attacked that this feeling suddenly became stronger. Demanteti's vitality is constantly decreasing, and she can't give birth to dragon eggs. I'm afraid she's having a difficult birth. What should we do? What should we do now? Garamandes, help her, help her!" Kajias's heart is already in chaos because the person he loves the most is facing a life-threatening crisis. Chapter 122. Garamandes also had a bitter smile on his face. Looking at the other Dragon King, he said, "Don't worry, it's useless to be anxious at this time. We also don't know how to help you. If you talk about killing enemies or defending against enemies, we will naturally do our best. But when it comes to giving birth, do you think we have any experience? Moreover, the situation of the two of you is so strange. I'm afraid only the dragon god knows what to do." Kagiosis anxiously said, "Then what should we do now? The energy fluctuations in Demanteti's body are very strong, and the energy fluctuations are very strange. The two of us are unable to control this energy. If this continues, I'm afraid she won't be able to hold on. With Demanteti's situation, it's impossible for the seven of us to contact the dragon god. What should we do? What should we do now? Can I give it a try?" Nian Bing, who had been standing at the side all this time, suddenly spoke. Apart from Demanteti, the 6 Dragon Kings' gazes immediately focused on her. Kagiosis revealed a doubtful and inquiring look. Nian Bing said, "Since you can't do anything now, why don't you let me give it a try? I think your child should have inherited the 2 extreme energies of light and darkness, resulting in such a mutation. I am a magician of the same origin of ice and fire. I have some experience in fusing extreme magical energies. Perhaps I can find a way to help the Light Dragon King. As long as the method works, you should be able to save her if you all act together." Indeed, although the 7 Dragon Kings could use mimicry magic, their mimicry magic was different from Nian Bing's. Nian Bing used the same origin of ice and fire to directly attract the magical energies of other elements for her own use. But the 7 Dragon Kings directly used their own powerful elemental energy to imitate the effects of other elements' magic. In essence, they were different to cope with the problem of fusing extreme magical energies. No matter how strong the 7 Dragon Kings were, they were not as knowledgeable as Nian Bing. Nian Bing had only suggested this because she had sensed the energy changes in Demanteti, the Light Dragon King. At this time, Kajios was already desperate. Even if there was only a little hope, he was unwilling to give up. He hurriedly said, "Okay, then you can try first. As long as you can save my wife and child, I can agree to any conditions you have." His breathing became more rapid, and a cold dark aura flickered, as if it could erupt at any time. Nian Bing walked towards Demanteti and said, "I don't need you to repay anything. Garamandes is my friend, and you are his friend. What do friends need to repay each other for helping each other?" Although the light aura around Demanteti was very unstable, being bathed in the light made Ling Nian Bing feel very comfortable. When he was about 3 meters away from Demanteti, a gentle energy stopped him from moving forward. That was Demanteti's own defensive power. Nian Bing's eyes flashed, and she naturally opened her innate domain. A 7-colored radiance floated out and surrounded her body. Under Nian Bing's control, the light element in the innate domain was immediately weakened. She took a few steps forward. After entering Demanteti's defensive range, Demanteti's body trembled, and her aura became even more unstable. At this time, the 6 Dragon Kings' eyes were all focused on Nian Bing. Kajios suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and hoped for a miracle. Nian Bing said softly, "Light Dragon King, please don't reject my energy. Believe me, I am a friend of Garamandes, and I am here to help you." After saying that, he immediately expanded his innate domain, enveloping Demanteti's body. The 7 types of energy in the heavenly eye domain instantly became balanced, and the 7 types of magic elements simultaneously spread towards Demanteti's body. After opening his heavenly eye and entering Demanteti's body through the 7 types of magic elements, Nian Bing's heavenly eye could clearly see the situation inside Demanteti's body. Just as he expected, Demanteti was already very weak. It wasn't because her energy was weak. Her light energy was extremely powerful, but the inside of her body was unceasingly being torn apart by the extreme energy. That extreme energy appeared in her lower abdomen. Nian Bing knew that with Demanteti's strength, she was naturally able to completely crush and expel this energy from her body. However, she was clearly unwilling to do so, because if she did so, the dragon child that she and Dark Dragon King Kageos had nurtured for 1,000 years would also be finished. Therefore, she was willing to endure intense pain, and was unwilling to harm her own child. At this time, the meridians and flesh in the vicinity of the dragon egg were already somewhat eroded by the extreme energy. This was also the reason why there was golden blood flowing out of Demanteti's body. The great maternal love infected Nian Bing's heart, and he no longer hesitated. Under the guidance of the heavenly eye, he controlled his 7 types of energy and carefully brought it to Demanteti's lower abdomen. He enveloped the energy that had mutated due to the extreme repulsion. Relying on the 7 types of magical elements and the miraculous effects of the heavenly eye domain, Nian Bing weakened the negative effects of the extreme energy. He used his domain to forcefully envelop the dragon egg in Demanteti's body, slowly absorbing and weakening it. The 7 types of magical elements not only isolated Demanteti from the intense pain, but also protected the dragon egg. Although the extreme energy was still wreaking havoc after being weakened, producing all kinds of mutations within the dragon egg, as long as Nian Bing's heavenly eye domain was still present, it would no longer harm Demanteti's body. At this time, Nian Bing was already feeling a little strained. After all, this was the first time he was controlling the heavenly eye domain like this. Demanteti's body was too strong, and although she tried her best to let go of her body and mind, it still affected Nian Bing's domain quite a bit. In addition, the strange energy attached to the dragon egg was wreaking havoc, which consumed a large amount of Nian Bing's magical energy. Nian Bing maintained his domain while saying, "Light Dragon King, you can use the light elemental energy to repair your body. With my domain around, I guarantee that your child won't be harmed. Only by perfecting your body can you give birth to it." Demanteti's body stopped trembling as the pain disappeared. She seemed to heave a sigh of relief as she gasped for air. Her tightly shut dragon eyes slowly opened, and she glanced at Nian Bing gratefully. The light elemental energy that she had been suppressing surged forth, repairing the damage to her lower abdomen. The golden light gradually turned into a holy white light, and the light elemental energy around her body was no longer as unstable as before. Demanteti's body began to repair due to the burst of light elemental energy. The impact on Nian Bing's domain became even greater. Nian Bing gritted his teeth and endured while summoning his 7 magic swords. Through the effect of the 7 top-grade magic gems on the swords, he was barely able to stabilize his heavenly eye domain. Kageosis, Garamandes, and the others heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that Demanteti's situation had taken a turn for the better. Kageosis grabbed Garamandes' shoulder and revealed an expression of deep gratitude. Thank you, Garamandes. If not for this friend of yours, I'm afraid." Garamandes smiled faintly and said, "Don't say so much. As long as Demanteti is fine, it's fine." Fatso laughed and said, Congratulations, Kageosis. I'm afraid you're going to be a father soon. You should also thank me. Nian Bing was brought here by me." Diamante's light energy was truly astonishing. The damage to his body was so severe, but under the effect of the light energy, he was able to rapidly repair it. Beads of sweat had already started to drip from Nian Bing's forehead. While continuously gathering magic through the 7 blades, he bitterly held on. He was very clear that Diamante's energy was too powerful. Coupled with the energy of that egg, it was impossible for him to help Demanteti give birth to the child with his current heavenly eye domain. After all, any dragon king was much stronger than him. Fortunately, now that he had ascertained the situation, it would be much easier to do this next step. Nian Bing took a deep breath and stabilized his domain with all his strength. He said in a deep voice, 7 Dragon Kings, you have to pay attention to what I'm saying now. Wait a moment, you'll take over my current job. My energy is too weak to help the Light Dragon King give birth to the child. The 7 of you have to work together to give birth to the child. Moreover, according to my observations, the child of the Light and Dark Dragon King is very strange. Its energy doesn't belong to any of the 7 elements. It should be a variant energy. Therefore, not only do you have to help the Light Dragon King give birth to the dragon egg, you also have to help her hatch it. Only with the combined strength of the 7 of you can you do all this. Otherwise, even if you can save the Light Dragon King, you won't be able to save the child. I'll use my innate domain to envelop the dragon egg and use it to weaken the variant energy within it so that it won't affect the Light Dragon King's body. Although your abilities can't be weakened, with the 7 of you, you can completely control the various energy fluctuations of the dragon egg. What you have to do is very simple. At the same time, inject your energy into the Light Dragon King's body and protect the dragon egg at the lower abdomen. As long as the 7 types of energy are balanced, coupled with the Light Dragon King's physical strength, it won't be difficult to give birth to the child. Do you understand what I mean? Kagyosi nodded and said, "You're saying that the 7 of us have to work together to protect the dragon egg with the 7 types of energy, and then help Demanteti give birth to it." Garamandes said with some worry, "Must we use the 7 types of energy? Can't we use a few less? In this kind of situation, if the 7 of us help Demanteti, who will protect it?" As soon as Garamandes said this, the cave immediately became silent. They all knew how powerful the enemy was. Without 4 or more Dragon Kings, it was impossible to resist the enemy's attack. However, Demanteti's situation was so dangerous. For a moment, all the Dragon Kings fell into a dilemma. They all looked at Nianbing, hoping that at least 1 or 2 Dragon Kings would not participate in the process of helping. Nianbing shook her head helplessly and said, "That's impossible. The energy of this dragon egg is extremely strange. Only by using the 7 types of energy at the same time and maintaining a balanced state can it be suppressed. If one type of energy is missing, it will be destroyed. Therefore, all 7 types of energy must be used at the same time. Garamandes, do you trust me?" Garamandes nodded and said, "Of course we trust you. You've already won our trust with your own actions. Tell us, what else can we do?" Nianbing gritted her teeth and said, "If you trust me, then leave the task of defense to me. However, I hope that you can give me the remaining 4 Miorda's sealing bottles. Only with them can I protect you. The enemy's main goal is these 4 bottles, not to destroy you. If there is no other choice, I would rather destroy the remaining 4 bottles than give them to them. I have already arranged more than 10 eternal sleep domains around this mountain. With these domains and the bottles I control, I should be able to hold on for a while. During this time, you must do your best to hatch the dragon egg. As soon as the little Dragon King is born, immediately come and help me repel the enemy. You must decide quickly, my domain can't hold on for much longer." The 6 Dragon Kings looked at each other in dismay. No one uttered a word. Katerios said resolutely, "Nianbing, thank you for your kindness. I trust you." After saying that, a black light flashed in his hand and a bottle of Miorda's sealing bottles appeared. The Ice Dragon King and Wind Dragon King sighed at the same time and also took out the bottles they were guarding. Demanteti spat out a mouthful of golden light and gathered 4 bottles. Nianbing took a deep breath and consolidated her domain once again. She said to the 7 Dragon Kings, "All right, you can begin. First, carefully transfer the energy into the Light Dragon King's body and coordinate it with her own energy. Control the strength of the energy to be exactly the same, then take over my current position." At this time, Demanteti's injuries had already healed under the enormous amount of light energy. The 6 Dragon Kings led by Katerios didn't dare to be negligent. Their figures flashed and each of their palms pressed on Demanteti's body from 6 different directions. They knew that every minute they gained would increase the probability of successfully hatching the little Dragon King. The strength of the 7 Dragon Kings was at least equivalent to 7 God-tier masters. Furthermore, their dragon magic had its own unique characteristic. They had lived on this continent for more than 10,000 years. Although they would only meet once in a while, they had already reached a tacit understanding with each other. Nian Bing didn't have to wait for too long. 7 abundant and powerful energy auras had already formed a layer of barrier and surrounded her. Nian Bing breathed a sigh of relief. She carefully withdrew her innate domain and let the 7 Dragon Kings take over her previous position. However, she was afraid that the 7 Dragon Kings wouldn't be able to control it well, so she still used her sky's eye to observe the situation inside Demanteti's body. Her worries were completely unnecessary. The 7 Dragon Kings' control of energy had already reached an extremely high level. With the 7 of them working together, they could easily control the energy around the dragon egg. Under the squirming of Demanteti's body, the dragon egg released and absorbed the mutated energy while slowly expelling it. After completely withdrawing her magic aura and the ability of her sky's eye, Nian Bing felt weak all over. After all, she had used up too much energy just now. She didn't dare to be negligent. She hurriedly put the 4 sealing bottles of Mudas that the Dragon Kings took out into her space ring. She stopped breathing and absorbed the surrounding innate aura and magic elements. Since she had taken over the heavy responsibility of defending, she had to adjust her condition. She had never seen a lich before, but she more or less knew how powerful a Dark Witch was. At that time, even Hillard was terrified by the appearance of the Dark Witch. She was afraid that it would be very difficult for her to deal with these 2 powerful guys. Now, she could only hope that the magic formations she had set up would be effective. Just as Nianbing was recovering his mana anxiously, there was a man-made ice cave not far from the valley that was filled with a dark and evil aura. Dark Witch Safin had completely recovered her strength with the help of her master, Evil Moon. A powerful aura was faintly discernible in the dark mist. Evil Lord, should we continue? Now that the 7 Dragon Kings have all gathered, I'm afraid it will be difficult for us to gain any advantage. With your ability, you can at most deal with 2 or 3 Dragon Kings at the same time. In addition to the Dark Dragon King who is guarding the Light Dragon King, there are at least 5 Dragon Kings in charge of guarding. As long as they don't come out, it will be very difficult for us to do anything. Evil Moon stood with his hands behind his back. The surrounding cold didn't affect him at all. Safin's judgment was very accurate. Although the Light Dragon King, who was the greatest threat to him among the 7 Dragon Kings, couldn't attack because she was giving birth, the other Dragon King's draconic magic wasn't a joke either. After planning for so many years, he didn't want to fail at the last step. However, he was unwilling to give up just like that. Walking back and forth in the cave, Evil Moon was also constantly thinking. Should he attack or give up? He was unwilling. He was really unwilling. If he could obtain all of the sealing bottles of Mudas, he would be able to open the lost country of his dreams. At that time, the promise from back then would be fulfilled, and all his wishes would become possible. However, the 7 Dragon Kings were definitely the strongest on this continent. With all of the 7 Dragon Kings here, even if 2 of them didn't participate in the battle, he was afraid, Lord Evil Lord, it's better to decide early. I already felt the fluctuation of life aura just now. I'm afraid that the Light Dragon is about to give birth. We still have 3 days. According to my estimation, the Light Dragon's birth and incubation will take at least 3 days to complete. A black figure walked out from a dark corner and came directly to Evil Moon's side. Leaning gently on him, it was the vampire Prince Sina. Evil Moon hugged Sina's slender waist. After a moment of silence, he said, "This operation can't be cancelled. Our appearance the day before yesterday has already made the 7 Dragon Kings vigilant and let go of this opportunity. It's very likely that there won't be another chance. So even if there are sacrifices, we have to act. I'll make it clear in advance. After the operation begins, if anyone flinches without my orders, don't blame me for being rude. Alright, let's start preparing now. We'll act in 6 hours. Dark Wizard Safin didn't say anything else when he heard Evilmoon's decision. Even though he was a dark wizard, he was only one of Evilmoon's top fighters. Moreover, it was just as Evilmoon had said. If he let go of this opportunity, he probably wouldn't get another one. The evil aura kept condensing in the cave. The whole cold mountain ridge was like a storm was coming. Nian Bing sat cross-legged and meditated while observing the 7 Dragon King's actions. An hour had passed. The light Dragon King Demanteti's expression gradually changed from relaxed to nervous. Although the other 6 Dragon Kings didn't show any signs of strain, their expressions were very serious. Obviously, Demanteti was about to give birth. Nian Bing's magical energy recovered very quickly by the side of the 7 Dragon Kings. Magical elements kept condensing, and with the gathering of innate energy, the consumption caused by excessive use of the innate domain was gradually recovered. It wouldn't take too long for him to return to his best state. Suddenly, the bodies of the 7 Dragon Kings shook at the same time. A layer of faint halo floated out from the lower abdomen of the light Dragon King Demanteti. The first thing that appeared was actually a black light. Then, the black light gradually turned white and then gray. An egg-shaped object was vaguely wrapped in the light. It was the first time Nian Bing saw a dragon egg. He couldn't help but widen his eyes. The egg was about 2 feet long. The perfectly round egg emitted a gray light. The egg was very smooth. As soon as it appeared, it was immediately lifted into the air by the 7 different colored magical energy of the 7 Dragon Kings. The 7 types of energy strengthened at the same time and tightly surrounded the egg. The egg was finally born. Next, it was the process of hatching. Nian Bing secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that he had passed the first stage. He hoped that there wouldn't be any problems later. Since the egg had been born, he didn't stay in the cave anymore. He turned around and walked out. When he reached the entrance of the cave, he sat down cross-legged again and began to meditate. At the same time, he paid attention to all the movements around him. While meditating, Nian Bing secretly prayed in his heart. "Little Dragon King, you have to come out quickly. Otherwise, I'm done for." At this moment, Nian Bing felt that time was passing very slowly. Although his magical energy recovered very quickly, but even if it fully recovered, it was still impossible to face the unknown danger. After an unknown amount of time, when the magical energy in Nian Bing's body was fully recovered, he jumped up from the ground. He summoned his 7 magical blades from the space ring and inserted them into the cave entrance. He closed his eyes and focused his spiritual energy on the Tian Yen acupoint, paying attention to all the movements around him. Suddenly, Nian Bing's spiritual energy moved. He abruptly opened his eyes and sighed in his heart. What was to come had still come. Although he hoped that the danger would stay away from him and that he could live a better life, since what was to come had already come, he wouldn't shrink back. At this moment, his mood had calmed down. He stood there calmly and waited. "No, bastard!" Safin roared. A huge amount of energy appeared out of nowhere and actually sucked away his spiritual energy. Although the Nether Witch's spiritual energy wasn't any weaker than the Dragon God's, he still couldn't withstand this kind of extraction. More than 10 Nether demons had already fallen to the ground and lost the ability to move. Most of the subordinates brought by the vampire Prince Sina were also lying on the ground. Their spiritual energy was much weaker. Suddenly losing it caused a huge burden on their bodies. Among all of them, only Evil Moon and the vampire Prince Sina weren't affected. A faint blue light flashed in Evil Moon's eyes. He let out a deep and gloomy roar. A circle of dark green light floated out and enveloped all of his subordinates. Only then did it isolate their spiritual energy. What a brilliant magic array! Since when did these Dragon King learn how to set up magic arrays? This is obviously prepared for us. Streaks of dark green light floated out and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Nian Bing, who was at the entrance of the cave, was shocked. His consciousness blurred for a moment. He said in horror, "How cruel! They actually destroyed 4 of my eternal sleep. Are these guys even human? How did they do it?" He had always been very confident in the eternal sleep magic array. He didn't expect that the magic array in front of him would be broken so easily. Of course, he didn't know that as the evil lord, Evelmun's heart was filled with anger. The originally powerful dark forces under his command had lost more than 30% of their combat power because of this hidden magic array. The appearance of the eternal sleep magic array didn't dispel Evelmun's idea of advancing. Instead, it strengthened his confidence. This was because he thought that as proud dragons, they actually knew how to use magic arrays. Obviously, there was a reason. He didn't know what the reason was, but it should be unfavorable to the Dragon King. The valley that was as warm as spring gradually became a little cold. It wasn't cold air, but a faint chill. Nian Bing was waiting for the enemy's arrival. He had already drawn a hexagram of ice and fire on the ground at the entrance of the cave. At this moment, he couldn't help but miss his hedgehog vest. If he had the magic scroll of that vest, perhaps he could resist for a while longer. There was still no movement in the cave. Obviously, it was impossible to hatch successfully in a short time. The ground began to tremble slightly. Nian Bing's heart trembled. He knew that the enemy had arrived. Suddenly, just a few dozen feet in front of him, cracks appeared on the ground. White bone claws stretched out from the cracks. The cracking sounds were accompanied by a strong sense of fear. One by one, skeletons jumped out from the cracks. Each skeleton held a bone knife in its hand. Their movements were very slow. The position of the eyes on the skulls emitted a faint green light. The sound of bones rubbing against each other made Nian Bing's scalp tighten. It was the first time he had seen such a thing. The number of skeletons was increasing, and it seemed that they had no intention of stopping. The skeletons seemed to have noticed the vitality emitted from Nian Bing's body. One by one, they lined up neatly, raised the bone knives in their hands, and kept moving in the direction of Nian Bing. Nian Bing didn't move. He wasn't in a hurry. The psychological pressure that the skeletons brought to him was far more useful than the strength that they could show. The appearance of the skeletons filled the entire valley with an aura of death. With every step they took, Nian Bing's heart would beat faster. Finally, the psychological pressure made Nian Bing unable to endure it any longer. He opened his Tian Yen acupoint and scanned the large number of skeletons in front of him. He discovered that there was a ball of green flame in the skull of these skeletons, and this ball of flame was clearly the source of power for the skeletons to move. Nian Bing didn't know where these undead creatures came from, but he was sure that they were not his friends. Rise. Holy light that pierces through heaven and earth. You represent the endless light that illuminates the earth. Transform, the aura of holy light, in the radiance of the same origin of ice and fire, blossom your divine splendor. Holy light. The light that pierced through heaven and earth suddenly became bright, and a soft milky white halo continuously condensed in front of Nian Bing. The skeletons that were originally moving forward rhythmically seemed to be afraid of this milky white light. They stopped moving forward as if they were waiting for something. Suddenly, a sharp whistling sound came from afar. The skeletons seemed to have forgotten everything, and their originally clumsy bodies became abnormally agile. One after another, they rushed in the direction of Nian Bing. Their bones were covered in a layer of green light. Nian Bing's eyes had already turned into a milky white light. Through his Tian Yen acupoint, he could clearly see every movement of these skeletons. The milky white halo instantly blossomed, and the holy light illuminated the earth, spreading into the distance. The holy light, which was also the light of purification, had the best effect on dark creatures. Wherever the milky white halo passed, the skeletons' bodies melted like snow, turning into a ball of ashes, and disappeared under the breeze. Large numbers of skeletons continued to fall. Even Nian Bing himself didn't expect that the holy light magic could actually have such a wonderful effect. When the holy light shone on the distant cracks in the ground, those cracks actually emitted bursts of green smoke. The cracked ground slowly closed, and no more skeletons crawled out. The white halo gradually disappeared, and the valley returned to its original tranquility. If not for the cold aura becoming stronger, perhaps Nian Bing would have the illusion that nothing had happened. Clap, clap, clap. Applause suddenly sounded, and a black shadow seemed to rise from the ground, gradually appearing in front of Nian Bing, step by step walking in his direction. I was wondering how the Dragon King could arrange such an exquisite magic array. It turns out that there was a human here, and a light magician at that. It seems that you were invited by the Dragon King to help. Nian Bing knew that the main character had come, and a white light shone between his eyebrows. Through his Tian Yen acupoint, he could clearly see the figures hidden in the black fog. Walking in the front was a person shrouded in a black robe, and the one who spoke was him. Beside him, on the left, was a slender woman with abnormally fair skin. She was extremely beautiful, but she revealed a trace of demonic aura. On his right was a mass of black fog. Seeing this mass of fog, Nian Bing's heart suddenly sank. It wasn't that he hadn't seen the same thing before. Behind the three of them, there were over 100 kinds of monsters shrouded in dark aura. They already couldn't be called human, because they already didn't have the appearance and aura of a human. But Nian Bing couldn't name these dark creatures. Nian Bing didn't speak, and unceasingly condensed the magic elements in the air. He just used a magic, so he needed to recover his magic power as soon as possible. "So it's you, brat!" Safin angrily roared, and took the lead to rush out of the black fog. Chapter 123. Upon hearing his voice, Nian Bing also recognized him, and said in surprise, "Underworld Witch Safin, you actually didn't die? Good, it's good that you didn't die. You didn't die last time, but that doesn't mean you won't die this time. I think the courier won't let you go this time." While saying that, he pointed to the holy radiance blade on the ground. Safin's breath stagnated. Seeing the holy radiance blade, a feeling of fear rose from the depths of his soul. How could he know that the holy radiance blade emitting a holy aura had already lost its connection with the sacred teacher? Although the holy aura on it was extremely dense, Nian Bing's strength was no longer enough to pose a threat to him. "Oh? Safin, you know each other?" Evil Moon said indifferently. Safin respectfully replied, "Reporting to Evil Lord, this kid is the human I told you about. He almost destroyed my body and soul last time. He has the sacred teacher's dawn blade in his hand. It's very powerful. Last time, it was the holy flame emitted by this blade that made me so weak." He hated Nian Bing to the extreme. If he hadn't met Nian Bing, if it hadn't been for this holy radiance blade, how could he have been so weak that he was captured by Yu, let alone become Evilmoon's servant? For a powerful dark creature like him, there was nothing more painful than having his freedom restricted. If it hadn't been for Evilmoon's words that moved him, he would rather self-destruct than be used by other dark creatures. At this time, seeing Nian Bing again, if he had eyes, he might have already spouted fire. Evil Moon swept a glance at the 7 blades on the ground, and his dark green eyes revealed a trace of surprise. He didn't move forward and calmly said, "Human, if you leave now, then nothing will happen. I can pretend that nothing happened. Our target is only the 7 Dragon Kings. Call them out." He didn't have any confidence in this operation, and didn't want to complicate matters. Nian Bing smiled indifferently. She said disdainfully, "You want to find the 7 Dragon Kings with your small fries? I alone am enough to deal with you. That's right, I was the one who set up the magic arrays outside, but they're just appetizers." Evil Moon looked at Nian Bing calmly and said, "In that case, don't blame me for being rude." As he spoke, he waved his hand and 2 black shadows flew out from behind him. They rushed towards Nian Bing like lightning. If Nian Bing did not go through 3 months of baptism with the Earth Dragon King Fatso, he would definitely not be able to deal with such a fast attack. However, things were different now. No matter how fast they were, he could still see them through his heaven's eye. They were 2 giants over 3 meters tall, and their thick bodies exuded a strong evil aura. In the process of rushing over, the deathly still gray airflow condensed into 2 long sabers, slashing at Nian Bing from both sides. Nian Bing didn't move. He wanted to give the other party an unfathomable feeling. When Evil Moon and the others appeared, he had already prepared the incantation. He watched as the 2 black shadows rushed to within 5 meters of him. Suddenly, a 7-colored light flashed and the 7 divine blades on the ground disappeared. 7 blurry shadows crossed each other. What could be faster than the speed of energy? The full element Shadow Golem appeared once again. The 2 underworld demons' bodies froze in the air. In the next moment they turned into minced meat on the ground. The wind blew. The minced meat on the ground turned into ashes and disappeared. Evil Moon frowned. Indeed, he couldn't tell how strong Nian Bing was on the surface. The 7 blades in front of Nian Bing made him very confused. Every blade exuded a strong aura. Although the 2 netherworld demons weren't very strong, they were still very strong. Although the 2 underworld demons weren't strong, their bodies were strong enough. They could instantly kill the 2 underworld demons without him knowing how to attack. Nian Bing in front of him had already attracted the evil lord's attention. It was obvious that this young human knew the underworld wizard Safin, and since he was able to guard this place, he knew how powerful they were. However, he still didn't show any intention of retreating, and it was obvious that he wasn't afraid of them, or he had some backing. Since none of the 7 Dragon Kings showed up, could this be a trap? Evil Moon hesitated. After all, he didn't have absolute confidence in this operation. Seeing that his opponent wasn't moving, Nian Bing was happy to wait. All he had to do was stall for time. The 7 shadow puppets hid behind him. These shadow puppets could absorb Xiantian Qi on their own, so they wouldn't consume his energy. Although Safin hated Nian Bing, he had a deep fear of the Holy Radiance Blade. He didn't dare to take the initiative to fight. He could only watch as Nian Bing stood there and looked at Yifeng with disdain. "Evil Lord, let me do it." Sina's charming voice sounded. Her body flashed, and she flew more than 10 feet away. She stopped not far from Nian Bing. She looked at Nian Bing from head to toe and smiled. She said, "Young man, you are very handsome. I wonder how your blood tastes?" Her eyes flashed with an evil light. She stared at Nian Bing. Nian Bing looked into her eyes, and felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. He knew that something was wrong, and hurriedly closed his eyes, not daring to look into her eyes. Although he had learned a lot about dark magic these days, he was still far from being able to compare to a true dark world powerhouse like Sina. Sina giggled and dashed forward. The evil glint in her eyes grew even brighter. Just as she was about to attack Nian Bing, a silver-white light suddenly erupted from Nian Bing's forehead. Countless rays of silver-white light shot out, and Sina's body came to an abrupt halt. She cried out in pain and flew backward. Her evil eyes lost their power under the stimulation of the silver-white light. She could no longer release evil aura through her eyes. Nian Bing opened his eyes again. With the heaven's eye, he saw Sina clearly. He said indifferently, "So it's a bat. Your evil light has no effect on me. Forget it." Evil Moon said in surprise. Heaven's eye acupoint opened. "No wonder. You are a master who has opened the heaven's eye acupoint. Human, you must be from the continent of gods." Nian Bing's heart skipped a beat. He didn't admit or deny it. He still had a mysterious smile on his face. He stood there calmly and looked at the group of evil beings in front of him. The seductive look in Sina's eyes disappeared. The evil coldness made the light around her dim a lot. Her evil eyes gradually turned golden. With a whoosh, a pair of blood-red wings spread out. A huge pressure suddenly appeared, as if it was on Sina's side. A gigantic demonic mouth appeared, and it seemed as if it could swallow Nian Bing at any moment. Nian Bing was shocked. He could feel Sina's power through the Heaven's Eye acupoint, but he couldn't retreat now. He could only look at Sina in silence and think of a countermeasure. Sina's hands formed a strange hand shape in front of her. She kept chanting in a strange voice. Traces of clear black aura kept condensing in front of her. Nian Bing knew he couldn't wait. If he let her condense energy, once it reached the level of a forbidden spell, he wouldn't be able to resist. He wouldn't have any chance. With a thought, the light puppet floated out. The holy light on the holy brilliance blade shone brightly. It rushed in front of Sina in an instant and gently slashed at her hands. When the holy aura met the evil aura, the white light became even more holy. Nian Bing seemed to hear the fear of the evil aura in the air. The light puppet's holy brilliance blade shone with a powerful white light. It was already in front of Sina. Sina looked at the light puppet coldly. She didn't dodge. Instead, half-foot-long fingernails suddenly grew out of her 10 fingers. She flicked her right hand. Balls of dark energy slammed into the glow emitted by the holy brilliance saber. A few powerful explosions occurred in the air as the light puppet was sent flying. Even though the holy brilliance saber was the nemesis of evil, Nian Bing's strength was still too far away from it. Sina smiled sinisterly as the red wings on her back spread open. Her body seemed to glide on water as she arrived in front of Nian Bing in the blink of an eye. Every time she moved, the evil aura around her would become stronger. The Vampire Queen's power was not to be underestimated. 7 shadows flashed, and all 7 shadow puppets moved at the same time. The 7 blades burst out with lights of various elements, and the shadows intertwined to stop Sina. The biggest advantage of the shadow puppets was their speed. However, Nian Bing was shocked to discover that the speed of the vampire in front of him wasn't any slower than his shadow puppets. This was especially so when the shadow puppets attacked her. She was always able to easily dodge them as if she knew what was going on. Her delicate body constantly twisted and turned, and she was like a wisp of smoke as she shuttled between the 7 shadow puppets. The black air current sent the 7 shadow puppets flying time and time again, avoiding the sharpest side of the 7 blades as she gradually approached Nian Bing. Nian Bing was already standing there without moving. He stared at Sina, who was getting closer and closer to him. He could feel her evil aura getting stronger and stronger. He laughed bitterly in his heart. "Garamandes, you have to hurry up." Sina was a little hesitant when she first attacked Nian Bing. After all, Nian Bing's strength was unfathomable. However, she relaxed a lot when she repelled the light puppet. Even the light holy blade, which was most effective against darkness, did not have enough power to push her back. It seemed that the human in front of her was not that scary. He only relied on the light puppet. The speed of the light puppets was indeed a problem for Sina. After all, they were meticulously researched by Nian Bing. Back then, even the Earth Dragon King Fatso suffered a loss. However, Sina's speed, innate bat instincts, and dodging techniques were far superior to the Earth Dragon King Fatso. In order to preserve more of her strength to deal with the 7 Dragon Kings, Sina did not use her strongest ability. She only relied on her tyrannical body and speed to close in on Nian Bing. In her mind, it would be enough if she could destroy Nian Bing. The light puppets gradually retreated under Sina's pressure. They were getting closer and closer to Nian Bing. Their energy was also gradually weakened because they could not maintain the speed of their condensation. Nian Bing wasn't in a hurry. He still didn't move. He was waiting for the best opportunity. He could only surprise his opponent once, and this was his only chance. If he couldn't severely injure his opponent, he wouldn't have another chance. Finally, Sina was 30 feet away from Nian Bing. The powerful evil aura continued to surge in Nian Bing's direction. The surging evil energy made Nian Bing's skin cold. However, he was no longer an ordinary magician. His body had been modified, so this kind of stimulation was not enough to pose a threat to him. The 30 feet distance quickly became 20 feet and then 10 feet. Under the pressure of the evil aura, Nian Bing had already shut down his breathing. He was relying on his connate energy to maintain his breathing. Sina's body flashed 7 times in a row, and her dark magic power abruptly burst forth, forcing the 7 shadow puppets back at the same time. Her body flashed in an arc, and her right hand with long fingernails was already right in front of Nian Bing's face. Right at this moment, a rainbow halo erupted with Nian Bing at its center. Sina's originally light body suddenly sank, and she was shocked to discover that her dark magic energy was rapidly weakening. The 7 shadow puppets charged at her at the same time. Under the enhancement of the heavenly eye domain, the 7 shadow puppets were instantly at their most powerful state. Their 7 magic sabers were filled with surging energy, and their speed was doubled. Meanwhile, Sina's speed had been greatly reduced in her shock. This was the ultimate move Nian Bing had left for her. However, Sina was an evil creature that had been around for over 1,000 years. She was far too experienced when it came to actual combat. She couldn't care less about conserving her strength at this critical moment. The dark evil energy in her body suddenly burst forth. Her red wings looked like they were about to bleed. A red mist of blood gushed out of them. She was trying to use her powerful energy to break free of Nian Bing's innate domain. The blood mist was extremely powerful. Not only did it reduce the effectiveness of the Sky Eye domain by more than half, but it also acted like a solid barrier that blocked the attacks of the light puppet. However, her barrier only blocked the 6 light puppets, including the light puppet. The black figure actually ignored the existence of the blood mist and floated in. With a lightning-fast slash, it heavily slashed at Sina's wings. Ah! In the intense pain, the dark energy gushed out of Sina's wounds, as if it wanted to suck her body dry. The vampire queen's tyrannical body instantly shrank, and her golden pupils returned to normal. Her beautiful face twisted with fear. She didn't know what was going on, but the dark energy she had cultivated for over 1,000 years was being continuously absorbed. The slash on her back was like a bottomless abyss that was devouring her body. After all, Evil Moon and Sina were husband and wife. Sina's situation immediately attracted his attention. His body, which was completely wrapped in a black robe, floated up, and dozens of dark green lights shot out. In the blink of an eye, they had entered Nian Bing's Sky Eye domain. Evil Moon's actions naturally attracted Nian Bing's attention. However, when the green lights entered her domain, Nian Bing found that they didn't belong to any element. Apart from delaying their attacks, she couldn't weaken them at all. Right at this moment, the shadow puppet moved on its own. The sword projection that had been slashing down on Sina's back rose into the air, and a black flame seemed to be burning on its blade. It moved at extreme speed, and it turned into a blur. It flashed through the air 12 times in a row, and all of the green light that came into contact with the black flame were instantly incinerated. Although the Sky Eye area was affected to a certain extent, it wasn't too much of a hindrance. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Sina spat out a mouthful of blood, and released a blood mist to block the 6 shadows' attacks. She let out a shrill cry, and under the protection of the blood mist, she forced her way out of the Sky Eye domain and returned to the Lord of Evil's side. It wasn't that she didn't want to take the opportunity to kill Nian Bing. However, the closer the Heavenly Eye realm was to Nian Bing's body, the stronger the realm would become. In order to survive, she didn't dare to take any risk. Everything became silent again. Sina knelt weakly on the ground, gasping for breath. She had lost a lot of her dark energy, and it wasn't just her external energy. Even her most precious soul energy had been sucked away by that slash. She didn't understand what had happened, but as a dark creature, her heart was filled with fear. After Sina retreated, Nian Bing immediately withdrew her Sky Eye domain. Sina wasn't the only one who didn't understand what had just happened. Even Nian Bing didn't understand what had happened. When Sina released the blood mist, his heart sank. Through the Sky Eye domain, he could clearly sense that the blood mist wasn't completely dark anymore. His 7 shadow puppets hadn't been completed yet, so there was no way they could break through such a strong defense. Just as he was about to react, the shadow puppet severely injured Sina. Not only that, but the shadow puppet also automatically blocked Evil Moon's attack for him. Nian Bing had a feeling that if it weren't for Evil Moon, the shadow puppet's slash would have sucked all of Sina's energy dry. He didn't know where this feeling came from, but it felt so real. The 7 shadow puppets lined up neatly in front of Nian Bing. In this short period of time, they quickly absorbed the connate energy in the air to replenish themselves. Of course, this didn't include the shadow puppet. The shadow puppet's body appeared to be much more solid than before, although it was still in a transparent form of energy. However, there seemed to be a black mist swirling around its body. It was obviously much stronger than the other shadow puppets. Seeing all of this, Nian Bing remembered the name of the blade in the shadow puppet's hand, the demon-devouring blade. Could it be that it can devour the aura of all demons? 7 blades, each one has its own characteristics, each one is filled with an unusually powerful aura, each one has its own uniqueness. Until now, Nian Bing had not figured out how powerful the energy hidden in these blades is. However, the shadow puppet's sudden outburst made him vaguely feel something. Of course, this feeling was not clear. Evil Moon's cold voice sounded. "Safin, you should recognize this blade. I didn't expect. It's still in the human world and didn't follow its master. I really didn't expect it." Safin's voice trembled. It's the curse of eternal hell, the demon-devouring blade. How could it be? How could Emperor Kurobutsu's demon-devouring blade be in this boy's hands? Moreover, this blade seems to have changed. It has become more powerful than before. Before, it did not seem to have this kind of ability. Demon Lord, I really don't know why this happened. When Emperor Kurobutsu and I were sealed together, I lost contact with him. You know, the main target of the divine prohibition is Emperor Kurobutsu. He alone bore nearly 70% of the divine prohibition. How could he survive? But this blade... Evil Moon raised his hand, stopping Safin from continuing. Slowly, step by step, he approached Nianbing. While walking, he calmly said, "Human, although your strength is beyond my expectations, but, you know, in the battle between you and Sina, I also saw a lot of things. At least, I can be sure that you are not from the godly continent. Even if you have opened your Tian Yen acupoint, it's only opened your Tian Yen acupoint. I have to admit, you are a genius. Your psychological quality is also very good. What a pity, your strength is still not enough to contend against us. If you didn't have those 7 blades in your hand, Safin could have easily killed you. Looking at you, you're just a human archmage. Although your magic is very strange, and you have a strange innate domain, your only result is death. I think you should have a certain relationship with the 7 Dragon Kings. If you are their friend and they allowed you to guard here alone, then the 7 Dragon Kings will be in some trouble. I really didn't think that I would find such a good opportunity today. Human, I admire your magic. You have Emperor Kurobutsu's devouring blade. If you are willing to submit to me, then not only will I spare your life, I will also teach you powerful dark magic and make you the strongest human. Perhaps you are stalling for time, but you no longer have the chance." Upon hearing Evil Moon's words, Nian Bing's heart sank. He knew that it wasn't because he was careless. The main problem was his own strength. The guy in front of him, who was called the Evil Lord, must be the leader of these people in the dark. He must be the lich that Garamans mentioned. Based on his experience, Nian Bing knew that the Evil Lord had seen through his flaws in his battle with Sina. Nian Bing was still not strong enough. However, he still overestimated her. In fact, she still hadn't reached the level of a magus. If it wasn't for the devouring blade, she would have been torn to pieces by Sina. Submitting could be exchanged for life, but would she? No, absolutely not. The pride in her bones filled Nienbing's body and mind. Looking back, she took a deep look at the cave behind her and secretly prayed, "Garamandes, I hope my sacrifice will give you enough time. You have to work hard." At this moment, Nienbing suddenly realized something. There was no more hatred in his heart. There was nothing else. His brain was completely filled with the obsession in his heart. He didn't think about anything for himself. Now, he only wanted to stop Evil Moon and the others. He wanted to stop these enemies from invading the 7 Dragon Kings. Obsession allowed Nian Bing's mind to merge perfectly with his own magic power. The sky eye became clearer than before. The 7 colored flames surrounded his body and burned slowly. The cheers of the magical elements could almost be heard in the air. Nian Bing calmly looked at the evil lord in front of him and calmly said, "I never thought of myself as a good person, nor did I think of myself as a gentleman. However, I do understand one principle. Thirsty, don't drink the water of the stolen spring. Heat, don't dwell in the shade of the evil tree. Do you want to hurt my friends? Yes, but only if you step over my dead body. You're right. You're all much stronger than me. But strength doesn't mean everything." Sina had recovered a little at this time. When she stood up straight again, her beautiful face became even paler. "Well, what a persistent human. If I suck your blood, I can at least recover 70%. Evil Moon, my lord, kill her. Don't hesitate any more." No one was more familiar with Evil Moon than her. She knew that Evil Moon had taken pity on her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have wasted so much time talking to Nian Bing at this tense moment. The Devil's Devouring Blade devoured more than half of Sina's ability. She hated the human in front of her. Evil Moon frowned slightly. The green light in his eyes became even more intense. "Human, don't tell me you still don't understand? I'll give you one last chance." Nian Bing's face showed a trace of sarcasm. "Don't call me human. My surname is Rong. My name is Nian Bing Rong. Remember my name. I think I'll leave a deeper impression on you." Evil Moon smiled faintly and said, "If that's the case, then I can only destroy you." Nian Bing's body floated up into the air, and he didn't have any leverage. Green light surrounded his body, and Nian Bing was shocked to discover that everything around him had turned green. The magical elements in the air were gradually being sucked away, and he was no longer able to absorb magical elements to replenish himself. Subconsciously, she controlled the shadow puppet to block in front of her. At the same time, she released the Sky Eye Realm. A storm was coming. Nian Bing didn't know how long she could hold on. "Nian Bing Rong, don't you realize? You only have the Devil's Devouring Blade. Even if Emperor Kurobutsu came back to life, he might not be able to defeat me." A ball of dark green flames appeared in front of Nian Bing like a bolt of lightning. There was no aura in the flames, nor was there any fire element. It seemed to be a pure flame, but it didn't have any pure aura. The sky lit up, and Nian Bing finally understood what kind of flame this was. This dark green flame was the burning of evil thoughts. He could even feel the aura of a soul within this flame. Of course, it wasn't the soul of the evil lord, but a dead spirit. A dead spirit that had been dead for an unknown period of time. At this moment, the green flame suddenly fluctuated slightly. It turned into a flame arrow and rushed into the Sky Eye realm in the blink of an eye. The flame arrow was extremely fast. Although it was slowed down by the Sky Eye realm, it arrived in front of the shadow puppet in the blink of an eye. The Devil's Devouring Blade in the shadow puppet's hand flashed. The green flame sword disappeared, and the energy of the shadow puppet seemed to have increased. Evil Moon praised, "Good, it deserves to be called the Devil's Devouring Blade. It seems that my guess is right. I don't know how you activated the energy of the Devil's Devouring Blade. It can absorb all the aura of darkness and evil. It really is a top dark divine weapon. However, it's not enough to have a divine weapon. It also depends on the strength of the user." As he spoke, a bell appeared in his hand. It was a black bell the size of a palm. When it appeared in Evil Moon's hand, it made a soft tinkling sound. The sound was very soft, but in Yen Bing's ears, it was like the roar of a giant bell. She subconsciously took a step back and almost fell to the ground. The 7 shadow puppets in front of her became a little dimmer at the same time. Only the light of the 7 divine blades was still strong. The sudden change shocked Ling Yen Bing. She didn't know what had happened. Evil Moon smiled and said, "I don't want to waste too much magic power on you, so I'll use this soul-seizing bell, which is also a dark divine weapon, to send you there. There are 7 sounds in the soul-seizing bell, and the first one is the shaking bell." As he spoke, the bell in his hand shook slightly. Suddenly, a bell that was much stronger than before suddenly sounded. Yen Bing felt her mind go blank. The sky-eye acupoint closed by itself, and the magic power in her body seemed to be trapped by something. The sky-eye realm was out of her control and disappeared automatically. When she woke up again, she found that only the 7 shadow puppets were still in front of her. However, except for the shadow puppet, the light of the other shadow puppets had become so dim that it was almost invisible. There was a trace of bitterness on Yen Bing's face. The evil lord was much more terrible than she had imagined. That was just a bell. Evil Moon smiled faintly and said, "It seems that I still overestimated you. You can't bear it after one vibration. Now you should understand that the top divine weapon depends on who is using it. The second sound of my soul-seizing bell is the sound of extinction. If you can bear it, I'll spare your life for the time being." As he spoke, he raised the soul-seizing bell in his hand again. Yen Bing stood up from the ground and waved her left hand. At the same time, she withdrew her 7 magic knives and dispersed the energy of the 7 shadow puppets. The energy of all the shadow puppets was transferred back to her body at the same time, which made her spirit recover a little and reconnected with her magic power. However, the magic-devouring knife did not bring her more energy. It seemed that all the evil aura that she had absorbed before was absorbed by the knife itself. "Wait a minute," Yen Bing suddenly said. She spread out her hands to show that she had given up resisting. "You broke my innate realm with one sound. I admit that I'm not your match." Evil Moon looked at Yen Bing with great interest and said, "So, you're going to surrender to me?" The reason why he admired Yen Bing was because Yen Bing had an innate talent that even Safin and Sina couldn't compare to. As long as it was used properly, this innate talent could turn Yen Bing into another version of himself. Although Safin was powerful, he was only a nether witch. The biggest difference between a nether witch and a lich was that they didn't have a body. Without a body, they wouldn't be afraid of physical attacks, but without a body, they wouldn't have acupuncture points.